Good evening, good evening, good evening to all of you joining us today on this Marcia Week's show on Wednesday, July the 17th. We want to welcome all of you, our loyal opposition, and those of you from the coalition of the righteous. All of you that are joining us this evening, what a pleasure it is to have you with us, and what an honor it is for me to be your host for tonight. And as a matter of fact, not just for tonight, I'll be hosting you over the next several nights. That will be Friday, also on Sunday, again Monday, and again on Wednesday, as Marcia is off in Trinidad with a tremendous production with the Praise Academy School of Dance. And they're doing a great job in Trinidad tonight. I believe they arrived today, and we're looking forward. Possibly, you might just see her jump in just for a couple of minutes tonight. But it is my distinct honor to be your host for tonight. We're looking forward to a great show. We have some great input. As you know, we always have Mr. Murray on Wednesday nights. And of course, we also have Mr. General Caswell Franklin back with us. And we'll hopefully be having Kemar on the show tonight. We'll be having a session with former Minister of Government, Maxine McLean, and a very special guest in tonight, Miss Dr. Reverend Paul Leacock will be joining us tonight. A tremendous presentation he made on Sunday at the Roadside Parliament. And we're looking forward to a great show. We want you to be sure to like us on Facebook and YouTube. Follow us on Facebook, I believe. Give us that thumbs up on YouTube and share. I am tremendously blessed as I move around the country how many people I am running into who are watching this show. They're either watching it live or they are watching it after the show has ended, on YouTube and Facebook retain the videos. We want to say what a pleasure and a joy it is to have all of you joining us this evening. And let me take the opportunity right now this evening. I promised that I would have done this. I spoke with my wife when I came in this evening. Just a few minutes ago, a couple of hours ago, I had to drop my son to the airport, and and I had a bit of an issue with my vehicle that I was using, and I had to turn it off in the area where you're not permitted to park your vehicle. And while I was waiting, one of the security came up to me and, asked very politely, if what was the issue? Did I have a problem? And, obviously I was parked in an area I should not be parked in. And I told him, I said, actually, the vehicle just shut down with me. I think it's a bit hot and I'm trying to get it started, but I haven't been successful at that time. And a few minutes transpired. I got out to try and get some water to put into the expansion box. They tell me the expansion chamber of the radiator. And I was asking a couple of people. And so I went back over to the same security and gentleman, and I asked for his assistance. And, as I was walking across, he asked me my name and asked me if I was Ferdinand and if I was Mr. Nichols. And I said, yes, I am. And to my surprise, he said to me, I watch you on the Marcia Weeks show. And I just want to really give a shout out to him. I unfortunately did not get his name, but I want to give a shout out to him, sir, and thank you so very much for your assistance. It was absolutely appreciated, and I thank you for being so kind in assisting me in getting some water to top up my radiator. And the moment I did and turned the key, the vehicle started, and I was able to make it home. And I'll deal with that probably tomorrow. But I just want to give him a shout out tonight. And I really want to thank you, sir, for your assistance. Thank you very much. Now, let me turn my attention to those of you here. Nigel Carrington for joining us this evening. Yes, we're going to have a great show tonight. Lucinda Aline, Queen Bee, always great to have you. And thank you for liking and sharing. And I agree, opposition, Fall in line. Change is coming. You better believe it. And I'm going to be sharing some things with you tonight. Bajan Boy, good evening. They are watching us, Bajan Boy, copying and posting and pasting. Still want to know where Corey Lane and Jerome Walcott. I think I'd like to know where Dale Marshall is as well. Ansel Seeley, good evening to you from New York. Good evening. Good evening, Queen Bee. And Sylvia Rock, good evening to you as well. Judy Jills, God bless you. Thank you for being with us again this evening. Jefferson Sobers, it's me, it's me. Okay, good evening to you too. I had a pretty busy day, to be honest with you, but I'm grateful, I'm thankful to be here this evening. Mildred Ben, good evening to you as well. Owen Hines, oh my goodness, Cynthia Thorpe, Juliet Gittins, God bless you. Marcia, always good to see you. I don't know what I'm going to do if you don't turn up on one of these nights. I may forget the national anthem, but I know you'll keep me on my toes. Rosalind Corbin, good evening to you as well. Skylar Watson, there is my faithful Sir Alfred Benjamin. Good evening from Brooklyn, right, Sir Alfred? Brooklyn in United States. Fabian Yard, good evening to you as well. FX Trading, BB, good night. Loyal Opposition. And thank you, Marcia. It is good to have you with us, and I'm so happy to have all of you. Nigel Newton, good evening to you as well. Wendy Ford Griffith, good evening, Wendy. Great to have you. Janitha Calendar, locked on from St. Philip West. Thank you for joining us tonight. Beverly Prescott and Judy Jilts. Kimar, we hope, is going to be on later on tonight. Diana Husbands, Sandra Howell, Marilyn Brathwaite, Taroni Hall, good evening to you as well. Great to have you with us, the Costa Fields, Pete Way 36. You're always there, Pete Way, and thank you for getting them to share and like. Appreciate your encouragement there. Sandra Watkins, pleasant good night to you as well. Joshua, present and accounted for. Yes, sir, Jabard. Good evening to you as well. Cecilia Miller, good to have you back with us again tonight. Joy and Faith. Monica Ince, Emerson Bab, good night to you as well. And greetings from Barbados to you in the UK. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Marcia. Vernon Garns, good evening to you as well. Masio, I hope I have that right. Mashio. Look, I'll get it. Okay, I'll get it. Noel, Grand Awakening. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. Great to have you with us again tonight. After the 5-minute stunts for a weekend prayer, what's next? Where's the? Oh my goodness, Pauline. Good evening to you, Queen McQueenest. Good night to you, Tyrone Blackman. Good evening to you as well. Welcome, welcome, welcome to all of you joining us tonight on the Loyal Opposition. Now, we're going to begin this evening, Marcia, unlike the Prime Minister's presentation, and I'm going to come to that. We're beginning this evening, as we always do, for a show with the national anthem. And I know Dave is prepped to go with that, but we're beginning with the national anthem. And of course, you know, in my segment, when we have the national anthem, I follow up with that national pledge. And I do that because I want people to understand that this show is not about partisan political games. It is about what is in the national interest of the people of Barbados. What is in the best interest that we can engage, you know, in terms of what is best for the people and what is best for the country and the whole gambit of governance. We are in a new era. We are in a new existence, and we now have to learn how to manage that existence. And I'm going to be coming to a number of things this evening. I'm going to be starting with the Prime Minister's address. I want to address a couple of things with regards to the address and a couple of other matters that I want to touch on tonight as we progress through and await and anticipate the presence of Mr. Franklin and Mr. Murray. All right. So we're going to begin with that national anthem, Marcia. Thank you so much. It's our theme song. Absolutely, Marcia. And it ought to be the first thing in any national matter, our anthem should be the first thing. There are certain things that are sovereign, there are certain things that are protocol, and the national anthem is one of them. We are a national grouping here. We're looking out in the interest of our country. So we start every single program with the national anthem. So, Dave, please, would you play the national anthem of the Sovereign Republic of Barbados? Ah, yes, yes, yes. Our national anthem that we, the citizens of the nation of Barbados, the sovereign republic of Barbados, are very proud of our sovereign symbols, our national anthem, our pledge, our national flag. Let's say together now our pledge. I pledge allegiance to my country, Barbados, and to my flag, to uphold and defend their honor, and by my living to do credit to my nation wherever I go. Thank you so very much. I want to take a moment at the very beginning, if I can, and if you will, if you will afford me the opportunity to just have a few moments of silence as we remember Mr. Sam Wilkinson, one of the most outstanding sports figures in the country. Was a colleague of mine in the days that I worked with Fort Royal, when in those days they used to sell Austin and Morris and Mini Cooper and Mini Clubman, and then moved on to the Mitsubishi line, the Lancers and the Gallants, and then on to the Jaguars and the Rovers and so on. I worked for several months, especially in my vacation time, and being a car maniac back then, I used to go to Fort Royal on a regular basis after school, as I was schooling at Harrison College. And after I left school, I spent some time there with Trevor Brace and Mr. Brown, Ed Brown, and Trevor. I don't recall his last name. Another gentleman by the name of Trevor as well, Sam Wilkinson, with Mr. Skeet, who was our sales manager, and Peter Short, who was our general manager. And so I'd like, if we please, can just have a moment of silence as Mr. Wilkinson, I believe, was relayed to rest this evening. And so, in respect, I'd like us to just have a moment of silence for him, please. Thank you so very much. Thank you so very, very much. Appreciate that. And we respect those that have fallen in our midst. And, uh, some people will probably be saying that I'm nitpicking, but I have the transcript in front of me of the Prime Minister's address to the country of Barbados with respect to the matter of crime and violence. Um, I there's some things that caught my attention. Now, I am not one who necessarily is exceptionally detailed, but there's some things that are glaringly obvious to me because my background is marketing, sales and marketing, and that's the business background that I have. And I must say that I was somewhat appalled at the commencement of the Prime Minister's address to the nation on a matter as serious. Thank you so very much, Dave. That's Mr. Sam Wilkinson right there. I'm sure many of you remember him and know him. Maybe many of you had interaction with him. He was a wonderful gentleman. This is Barry Wilkinson's father. And and I had some wonderful days with Sam. Unfortunately, I was unable to make it to his internment today, and I understood he was not well. I've been doing a lot of traveling, but I am very happy to have interacted with him. He was a fine gentleman and a very honest individual. I never heard him tell any fibs or fabricate any stories to get a sale of any vehicle that he has ever had. So we extend from the Marcia Week show to the entire family our condolences, and to his friends and colleagues who work with him, our deepest condolences. And we certainly, he is going to be missed, and we certainly extend our condolences to you, Barry, as well. Many of you will remember or know Barry Wilkinson, our very outstanding cricket announcer. So very, so very, very, so very, very well, in terms of the cricket. So again, we want to honor him and respect him indeed. As I was saying, I listened to the Prime Minister's presentation. I believe that she intended, to the best of her ability, and I give her, we're told, my mother taught me to give Jack his jacket, and I want to, I don't know if the correct word I should use is commend, um, but I want to say that it was good to finally hear the Prime Minister address the matter of crime and violence in Barbados after 27 deaths of young people, several of whom were violently shot and killed. To finally hear the Prime Minister speak to the matter. I am unsure of it because I don't like to accuse persons wrongfully, but I don't recall hearing anything from the Attorney General. If the Attorney General spoke to it, I apologize, sir, but I don't recall personally hearing it. If any of you all recall him in current, I don't mean when he was running for election, I mean current, addressing the matter, or the minister with regards to crime, speaking to the matter. If any of you heard them, please let me know here in the chat, and I would be appreciative of that. But I was pleased to see finally, after we had addressed the matter, which seems to be always the case, the Prime Minister addressed the matter. And please, Madam Prime Minister, if you're watching this show tonight, don't get upset with me. One of the things about leadership is criticism and critique. It makes you a better leader. You're not a leader because you're a woman. You're not a leader because you're articulate and you can speak well. You are a leader because the people voted you into that position, and they expect a leadership quality from you that exemplifies much of what you are addressing in terms of your own conduct and behavior. One of the things I've learned about leadership is that leadership has to set the example by their own conduct and by their own attitudes and behavior, and how they engage things. And one of the things I've also learned about leadership is that when we mess up, one of the best things to do is to come back, apologize for the mess that you've made, and see how we can best move forward. That's one of the things I've learned about leadership. Now, as I started to watch the presentation by the Prime Minister, I was disappointed that in addressing a matter as serious as crime and violence in our country, she did not begin the evening with the national anthem of Barbados. She began it with a song. And I think it was I can't remember, I think it was Mark Lord, one of those. You all would know who the Calypsonian is. My country to me. I think you all put it in for me before. Now, I respect the gentleman, but on a matter as serious as crime and violence on a national level, the first thing that should have been played was the national anthem of Barbados. Listen to the first verse, ma'am. In plenty and in time of need. This country is in time of need. When this fair land was young, our brave forefathers sowed the seed from which our pride is sprung. A pride that makes no wanton boast of what it has withstood, that binds our hearts from coast to coast, the pride of nationhood. I would have thought that the number one thing the people of Barbados needed to hear was this national anthem that unites us all under one single banner, the banner of the country and the Republic of Barbados. That's the first thing I want to touch on. Now, people may say I'm nitpicking. No, if we on this show respect our national anthem to the level that we engage this national anthem every single time that we start this show, are we seriously going to have the Prime Minister addressing a matter as serious as crime and violence in the country begin with a song? That was the first disappointment I experienced in the address. But let me move on. The second thing I observed, I have the transcript in front of me. The second thing I observed was a comment that she made. Yeah, I know. When she said, and I'm going to quote, whether in our homes, our place of work, our businesses, and indeed, we must do so whether we worship in our churches, our mosques, our temples, wherever we go for religious or spiritual worship, we must immediately address the absence of religious and moral grounding of our children. Are we serious? Are we serious? Do you know how much churches put into their, and mosques and other religious groups put into their training and raising of children? I believe almost every church has a Sunday school that addresses children, and a Sunday school that addresses teenagers and young people, addresses adolescents, addresses adults, addresses married couples. Churches have significant aspects that address the moral and spiritual component of every child in this country if their parents would either send them or bring them to church. All right? Now, it's not the absence of religious and moral grounding. The religious and moral grounding is there. It is there. The question we have to ask ourselves is, are we implementing it? The grounding is there. There's not a person in this country that does not know right from wrong. You think those guys that are picking up guns and shooting people, you think the man that stabbed that young girl with her baby and killed them both, you think they did not know the difference between right and wrong? That's morality. Morality is not about sexuality. Morality is about knowing what is right and knowing what is wrong. That is what morality is. And what the religious grounding does is it reinforces and it strengthens the perspective and the view of our moral fabric. That's what it does, because we are then influenced by our faith, by what we believe, and we activate it. Okay? That is what it's about. And so please, ma'am, don't insult the intelligence of the religious community in this country to suggest that we have not been doing our part in providing the moral and religious grounding of children. There was a time that every morning in school began with prayers. Now, I don't know what is happening in the schools today. I don't know what the Ministry of Education has engaged in schools today, because what I have found and what I have observed is that there is a global agenda by the LGBTQ2 plus alphabet group to transform the moral fabric of our countries. And that is why Barbados is undergoing the moral decadency. And I'm going to show you something tonight that many of you are not going to believe. That is on sale in one of our books in the bookstore, in one of the bookstores in Barbados. I'm not going to call the name of the bookstore. You call the name of the bookstore and I will whistle. But we are teaching, and parents, I know that parents, and remember, I have said on this program before that the whole matter of addressing the matter of our young people is a very complex and complicated one, because it's a many-sided factor that is involved. It involves parents. It involves the extended family group in what we would call the village. It involves school, teachers, priests, pastors, churches. It involves people around us. It involves the whole fabric of this country. All right? These are the things that are contributory to the positive or negative development of the young people in our country. And I am one who believes in two things. One, that the current young people can be saved. And when I say saved, I don't mean to get them to heaven. I mean that they can be brought out of their predicament if given the opportunity and if given the avenue shown how it can be done. I believe that. And secondly, I believe what the Jesuits, I believe, used to say: give us a child for the first 7 years and I will show you the man. I believe of the significant input of parents into what happens with a child. Many of our children are experiencing significant child abuse, to the point where Paradise has successfully remove corporal punishment from schools, so a child can't get lashes anymore. And I am one who believes in licks, because I got licks and I'm not warped, but I don't believe in domestic violence. I don't believe in the violence in anger against a child. There are times I have fallen prey to that and I've had to repent of it, but I don't believe in it. But I grew up with a mother who lashed children, including me, and she never did it in anger, because she believed what her Bible taught her. She believed that ignorance is bound up in the heart of a child and the rod will drive it from him or her. That's what she believed. And many of us took licks. A lot of you all here watching this show tonight, the 533, and many of you who are watching this show in the days to come, got licks when you're at school. And you are not psychologically and mentally warped and distorted. If anything, some of you wish you could raise your mother and father out of the grave and thank them for the licks that you got that drove the foolishness out of you. And that is a fact, and that is a reality. I played with guns. I remember when I was growing up, I had 2 silver guns that I had by my side with a cap, with a hat, because I wanted to be either the Lone Ranger or Wyatt Earp. And I have not become a criminal. I don't have a gun going out there shooting people as I have grown up. So don't tell me guns, giving a child a gun predisposes them to violence. And I'm going to come to the matter of games. I'm going to come to that matter. All right. But I want to address this aspect. Now, the third thing I want to address in her presentation was the matter of trying to establish an argument for the cybercrime bill to be passed. And this is what she said, and I quote, and I'm not going to quote my words. I'm going to quote from her. We have talked about it for far too long, that is the religious and moral grounding of the children, without serious progress. We must teach them, and they must learn the basic difference between right and wrong. They need to respect human life, their own lives, and indeed that of others. We need to control the. Now, listen to this: their own lives, and indeed that of others. Now, listen to the next following comments. We need to control the inappropriate use. Listen, we need to control the inappropriate use of the social media to circulate memes that hurl insults or share videos that denigrate groups like young women, young girls, or promote the attraction of guns, or indeed the sending of direct messages to issue threats and to deliberately generate fake news. News that we know to be fake. We must monitor and balance the excessive screen time and exposure to violent content. This nation's children are being desensitized to violence through the non-stop playing of video games and the overuse and misuse of social media through the cartoons that they're watching. In some instances, it is interesting that it is called social media. That is what the Prime Minister said. Now, in that, you hear at the very beginning, we need to control. That's what she said. We need to control the inappropriate use. Now, this is the same statement, a similar type of statement that she made to Amanpour when the pandemic began. That we need to control the misinformation and false information and fake news. And the people who were most guilty of fake news, misinformation, and false information were the governments, including our Prime Minister, who, rather than listening to a cadre of professional doctors across the world, listened to an idiot who headed the World Health Organization and put this country under severe lockdowns and refused to allow people to have access to alternative methods of healing of the COVID-19 virus, other than the junk that was provided by what we now know and were saying then was a system that would be detrimental inevitably to people. She is one of the people leading a country who was complicit in this matter and contributory to the demise of many people across the world. She was one of the people, and rather than listening to the frontline doctors, rather than listening to Dr. McCullough, rather than listening to Dr. Maloney, who was the man who created the mRNA vaccine, rather than listening to a cadre of men and women who were Nobel Peace Prize winners and former consultants to the WHO and whatnot, she listened to a demon of a man who had no credibility in his own country in Ethiopia, leading the World Health Organization. That is why they're heading downwards right now. They wanted to implement the sovereign control of our countries to be able to lock us down again. But we as a people will never allow that to happen to us again. We will not permit it. And if you try it, you're going to have an uprising in this country, because we will not have it again. You lied to us. You did not listen. Dr. McCullough was preaching alternative methods. And you and your chief medical officer and the president of the Barbados Medical Fraternity in this country, and I make no apologies for it, because I tried to reach out to her and I sent her information with regards to this, and it was ignored because you all got more access to better minds and better brains than we do. Well, I had the access to the man who created the vaccination program. I have access to Dr. Maloney and Dr. McCullough, direct access to them. And these are facts. I thank you, Trevor. Facts are facts. These are the facts. Now, today, the Supreme Court in Canada has opened the door for lawsuits beyond any shadow of a doubt to that pharmaceutical industry, and in the United States, including that other demon in the United States by the name of Dr. Fauci, who should be locked up in prison for what he calls in America. And that prime minister in Canada that you hooked up arms with, who should be locked up in Canada for taking and robbing people of their revenues and income because they did not agree with his lockdowns. That's the demon that you're associating with. And if you lie down with the dogs, you're going to get up with fleas. And we told you, the world was trying to tell you, all of us were trying to tell you that that's not the way to go. And you ignored us because we weren't no big shots. We weren't no authorities. And now you have the audacity to come and talk to us about false information, misinformation, and disinformation. You are now concerned about what is happening on social media. I'm not going to tell you that I don't agree that our young people spend too much time on their video games, but that is something for parents to control. There is something on your TVs and on your YouTubes and on all of these systems that you have called parental control that you can determine what can be accessed. And if you don't know it, Madam Prime Minister, learn it. And if you were to shut down games online, games are available to be bought through Amazon. What are you going to do? Deny access when it is shipped in? So let's not talk nonsense. Let us not talk nonsense. What you're trying to do is to set a case for the cybercrime bill by telling us these things. And I want to say to the ladies, to the young women, to respect yourself. I have seen videos that have been sent out, and I am disappointed that rather than trying to resolve issues, young people spurt on so they can do a little video show and send it out. And that is the other thing I wanted to touch on tonight in terms of this matter to do with sending direct messages to issue threats to deliberately generate fake news. A lot of what is fake news is actually accurate news. But because the mainstream media and the governments don't carry it, it is fake news. And that's what governments want to do. That is what this government wants to do as a part of a global move to control the information that its citizens have access to, that they can control the narrative and only allow you to hear what they want you to hear. And that is an LGBTQ agenda that is being foisted upon the people of this world through the European Union. Facts are facts, and you can't hide it. We know it. Now, this brings me to my final matter that I want to share with you before I see the general is in the back room. Caswell, I am going to bring you in. I'm going to bring you in on this if you're ready. Give me a thumbs up if you're ready to come in. I want to bring you in on this evening. Good evening, Caswell. Good evening, my friend. You can tell that I'm fired up a bit. And
I can tell I was going to duck.
I grew up in the days of Wes Hall and Charlie Griffith, and there were beamers and bouncers back then. I mean, real bouncers. You know what I'm talking about. But welcome, General. Welcome to the show tonight.
Thank you, and good night, everyone. I was there listening to you already, and I refuse to allow the Prime Minister to get me upset because that lady is shallow, extremely shallow. She talks whatever she thinks you want to hear, because I'll give an example. She was speaking about the bra issue that I highlighted on this show, where this person went into the system and changed people's taxes. I know when people asked for them to lower down, she even said that met some sort of criticism of people in this place, meaning Sonia Brown, she was talking about in the house, not understanding. She doesn't understand much. Not understanding that this was not a government policy. It was not a change in the law. It was a change in one man at Bra. And I can tell you what happened. The government has dictates from IMF. And Bra is supposed to bring in a certain amount of money when the month comes. But if I don't pay my taxes, I can't bring any money. So that doesn't make sense. That giving people quarters and say, well, this is how much you should bring in. You can't determine if I don't have money to pay my land tax. How are you going to get it from me? You accrue it, but you don't actually receive it. So what they did, in order to try to meet the quotas that the IMF have put on them, or let me say the Ministry of Finance, the IMF through the Ministry of Finance, they decided that he started fiddling with people's taxes without any law behind him, without any policy behind him. All they wanted to do is to look good with their numbers, so they raise people's taxes. And then had the gall to blame it on town planning changing the classifications. That is not true. Town planning has not changed anything. But these people will tell any lie as long as it suffices what they want you to believe. All right? That never happened. But the prime minister now isn't aware of what's going on, talking about if you change the taxes, what it would do to the programs that we have and stuff. The money was never budgeted for. It was never part of the money that the government expected to get. They didn't ask for it. This was only one man who decided he can fiddle with the computer and change people's taxes. And now they caught him because he has friends in right places. They are trying to, even the one with the lady who was responsible at Bra for enforcement of when people do wrong, and she's supposed to. Her house was devalued by half of what it was really worth, probably less than half. And her neighbors, who had much smaller houses, the matter of fact, the neighbors' houses could go into hers, and you wouldn't know the neighbors' houses inside there. And the neighbor's house was valued higher. The next door neighbor, and I'm talking about neighbor, the next street or next thing, immediate next door neighbor. They came up with the lie to say, oh, it's in a flood prone area, so you will get that. So that is not true. So if she is in a flood prone area, then her neighbors, her immediate next door neighbor, will be in a flood prone area too. So what utter rubbish. But the prime minister goes into the house and spoke that nonsense because people tell her things. She don't check for herself. She does not have the ability to check for herself. And she pokes off there and give people the impression that something is well and good. It is not. The prime minister must stop doing this nonsense in this country. She must tell the truth. I know it's hard for politicians to tell the truth. It's a bit trying, but she got to try. Because everything that the prime minister has said, it is questionable. But mind you, everything that people send to me, because I do not take time out to listen to her, because I know, they say out of the mouth of fools come foolishness. Well, I don't listen to foolishness. So I just can't bear it because she is not telling the truth. All she wants to do, for instance, you and a couple of other preachers were saying people want to go back to God. And enough people saying so she want to go back to God too. The only time she's ever been to church is christening and official functions and funerals. Never before the government she talking about nonsense. This is just to suit people, the people that she wants to impress, even trifling with God.
And mind you, Caswell, because I saw one or two comments here. Mind you, I'm in agreement. I think the whole country will be in agreement that the country needs prayer. I don't think there are going to be too many people that can disagree with that factor. So what you're saying is actually a already known an entity. We already know that. I am planning to get together with a number of our religious leaders from all types of denomination. I'm working on it at the moment that we can have a national gathering for prayer, not something in my church, Caswell, or something in your church, Caswell, because one of the things I saw in the article carried in the Nation with regards to Joseph Atherley's criticism of church leaders and so on, was that there were some church leaders that say we've been praying for this in our churches and whatnot. But what the country needs to hear, Caswell, is the church leaders speaking on a national platform where they can hear them encouraging the nation, not just your assembly or your district church or whatever, the whole country to come together. Now, if the prime minister really had a deep concern about this matter, she should have got a hold of the president of the Barbados Christian Council, the president of the Barbados Evangelical Association that covers most all the churches in the country, and arrange to have a national day of prayer with a prayer session being held at the gymnasium or Kensington. You just refurbished Kensington. So let's hold it at Kensington. So that, and I'm not talking anyhow. Let me leave that. I have it at Kensington Oval, and let the prime minister, the leader of the opposition, everybody come together because, Caswell, there's a national issue.
Look, really,
This is not a DLP or BLP matter.
look. My problem with the churches is that they are too aligned politically. So they do not want to say anything that would upset the prime minister. You know, all along, you and a few others were talking about we need prayer, we need this, we need everything else. They weren't coming to say anything. Prime minister come and say prayer, and then they all jump on the bandwagon and talking about, oh yes, and they start praising her. Because everything in this country, if you go to the house, everybody gets up and praise the prime minister. You go to the news media, they get up and praise the prime minister. It seems to be an edict that you have to praise her first. And the people, the church is not even praising her before they praise God. This is ridiculous. And the thing is, what they should be doing is like Critchlow used to do when he was a boy. You remember Dean Critchlow?
Oh
Man,
yes.
he
Oh
he
yes.
took a turn in Barrow when the country was going down in the
Oh
70s.
yes. I
You
remember
know?
well. I remember well. And I
You know?
remember people like what was his name again? The Catholic minister that got involved with the Calypsos. What was his name again?
Harcourt,
Harcourt. Harcourt Blackett, right? Harcourt.
Monsignor, we call it Monsignor Vincent
Monsignor.
now.
Yeah, and
Monsignor
then
Vincent.
Dean Critchlow and what was his name now? Oh my goodness, the fair-skinned Reverend. Uh, oh dear me, man, Caswell, come, you know who I mean. I think he
Mm-hmm.
used to lead the church, St. Cyprian's Church, in Belleville. He was another
Hatch.
Hatch, Father Hatch. Thank you. You remember listening to him on the call-in programs, and
Mm-hmm.
man, he would chastise the government, you know. But I agree, there is a case. Thank you, it's me. There is a case to be made, that it would appear to me, and I say this with the deepest respect for my colleagues, but it would appear to me that church leaders don't want to upset the apple cart. I will tell you this, Caswell. I read the four gospels, and if there's one thing I discovered about Jesus, is Jesus used to upset everybody's equilibrium. Everybody. That's why they crucified him, man, because he used to upset the religious people, the people involved in business. He upset everybody. If you was doing wrong, you was wrong. But we have spiritual leaders today that don't want to call out national leaders when they're wrong.
But you know why? Because they want a stipend. They want a grant. They want
Well,
some money.
what stipend and gram is only $150 they give us?
No, 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 no. They might give you. They get other things. They get boards. They get chairmanships. They get all kind of stuff. They get put on CBC every time as a consultant and all kind of crap. That is what they're looking for. So that they are looking not for, it's not to say you can't serve man and mammoth, but they are making sure they get their hand on the loot.
I
Right now,
Caswell,
right now, right now, right now, we have a dean who every time the president got down St. Lucie, he acting. Keep out the people place. Separate the two. You know,
you know they're
they got people adequate to serve a president. I can do it for them if they can't find the body. You know what I mean?
and there are people,
That's why she's in. So, you remember the dean of the cathedral used to attack the government of going wrong. So she
oh
made it
yes,
by one. So this
oh
dean ain't
yes.
doing nothing. He liked the idea. The man gotta stop this foolishness.
Yes. I tell you this, Caswell, there are those who have argued for the separation of church and state. I want to make it clear to all of you who got that argument. You don't find that in the leaders, in the tenets of the founding fathers of the United States. The separation of church and state that was established in America was to prevent the government from controlling the religious sector of the
Yes.
country, not to prevent the religious sector from being involved in what's happening nationally. That was the concept of the separation of church and state, because both deal with people, Caswell. You can't separate them because it's about people. And when the founding fathers made this position of the church and state, it was to prevent any government from sanctioning or interfering with the faith of any individual in their country. So that people in Barbados, even though the predominant faith in Barbados is Christianity, The prime minister and the government cannot prevent Muslims from worshiping here or coming here, or Rastas from doing it. That is the separation of church and state that was intended by the founding fathers of America. That's where it started. It didn't start in Barbados. It started in the United States of America. But it was not ever intended to prevent the Rastafari or the Muslims or the Christians or anybody who was a religious, faith-based person from contributing to the development of their country. That was never the intent.
No,
And
see, but this
anybody
her
that tells you
intent is
different is a liar.
her intent is to control the church leaders.
Well, I would have to even push it further than that. Based on the statement I have in front of me, the transcript I have, her intent is to control. Period.
Yes, but she's a
Period.
control freak. She's a
Because
control freak.
because Caswell, listen, she made the statement. We must now control. Listen to the statement carefully. She said here, we need to control the inappropriate use of social media. I'm not going to tell you that there are not aspects of social media that are inappropriate, but Caswell, let me just pull my notes here. I thought TikTok had a standard if you were going to be on TikTok. I thought X, which was formerly Twitter, had a standard if you were going to be on them. I have put things on Facebook and they take down my page. I don't know about you. I have put things on YouTube and the threaten and suspend me for 2 and 3 weeks. You would know Marcia has had this happen to her. And
But
and
they
and,
have
and
done that.
listen, and listen, what about Netflix? You see some of them pictures coming out on Netflix.
Yeah.
I have Netflix and I see the pictures there. So what are you saying? You're going to block all of this? You're going to control. We are not saying that they're not messages that are sent in the video games again too casual. I mean, I suspended my children at some point playing certain video games. I had them even take a hammer and break up some of the games that they used to play. But that was me as a parent, casual. Where's the responsibility of a parent? Because you know they have these control mechanisms, parental control mechanisms, and all of these things. Where are the parents in this?
They're looking for a scapegoat, right? When I was a boy, we had cartoons too, and they were
Yes,
more violent than anything that we got now. You remember Quicks, draw me draw, always out, and he shooting, pow,
but you
pow,
but you
pow,
remember
shooting.
the wolf
Coyote,
Wiley Coyote and
yeah,
the Roadrunner.
and the world runner, he gets splattered with a big boulder every time.
And what was the name of the cat? You remember the cat and the mouse?
Tom and Jerry,
Tom and Jerry. You can have nothing more violent than them.
you know. So don't tell me about violence and things. We had more gunslinging and all kind of stuff as little boys because most of the movies used to be westerns, you know. So that is looking for a scapegoat. Don't tell me that the young people are more impressionable than we were. I doubt it. I find that they're far more intelligent than we ever will be. If I were born at this time, might be a superstar, you know. But the kind of kids I'm seeing around the place, yes, we had bad fellas too,
Yeah, we
and
did.
we had the problem is we didn't have the social media that would show up the bad fellas. I know I there was a fella at school. I'm not gonna call his name, but he let me real bad. Nobody could have messed with me, man. And anybody messed with me used to beat them. And he used to beat everybody. He ran a fella from Commonwealth to Jackson with a back off a desk foot and running with it from Commonwealth School to Jackson. And many fella running, hollering hard. The parents say, "Holler them, open our lady," and my man turn back and walk back to Commonwealth with the world over his shoulder. I understand he became a priest or something. You know, the children change. Look. I always thought he was going to get hanged. You know, but time went on. They become. Look, we had fellas who turned out to be very
But
good
but
good men in this country who went
oh, you
at school.
mean?
These guys are mad.
But Caswell, I had a sit down session today with a guy out there in the area opposite St. Hill Funeral Home. You know, there by Combamere, the back of
Yes.
Combamere. I had a sit down, and Caswell, he told me about how and he's a believer. He's a Christian young gentleman. He told me about how through his life he was able to influence several people in his block there along his road, including a former guy who was a gunman who spent time in jail, who is now an evangelist, Caswell.
Mm-hmm.
helping him to evangelize some of the young people and tell them about the Lord, not because he wants to get them saved and get them to heaven, but because he wants to see the young people transformed. I remember when I had that meeting with that leadership leader guy from the gang. I won't call the name of the gang, and I asked him what in his opinion he felt was the greatest need of the young people. His instantaneous response, Caswell, was God. And when I asked him, why would you say God? His response was, because if it's not for God, we as young people will self destruct. In other words, we need something more than just politicians and all these kind of things to give us some kind of a foundation or basis when it comes to life. And but I listen. I know. Glenn is join us. He's going to be coming on in a couple of minutes, and hopefully we'll have further discussion about this. Because I think this is. I don't know exactly what you would have wanted to share. I know I took away all of your time, and I beg your forgiveness. But I will say I don't let the PM upset me. What upsets me is the lies, and I have a responsibility to correct the perception because, Caswell, you can't talk like this, and then I see the pictures of you hugging up gunmen.
Yeah.
I mean, what example are you setting to
Also,
us?
when they had some show and she was on the stage, and when they was singing, they said, "I don't give a," and she there jammed up saying, "She don't give a," you know what? She was there and she mouthed the words. I saw her. She
And you
has,
know,
she has, she has, she has no moral minimum. She will, if you think she's hit the bottom, she'll go again. Then she will start tunneling. There's nothing below. As she said, this below me that I wouldn't do. She 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 made sure she courted the the, the criminals to get votes. The, and and these fellas have taken over. And then
I
she
I
take, and now they're giving them money.
and I
It,
mean
it, 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 that,
when I hear you talk about the opening of Parliament,
mm,
that your wife, you're a senator, you are a senator. And to be honest with you, Caswell, I have made a decision. If anybody invite me to a formal function and the invitation is not to me and my wife, I ain't going because you are not going to disrespect me by disrespecting my wife. My wife is a significant part of me. Now, if the invitation comes and my wife is unable to make it, that is a different matter. But if you send an invitation to me and my wife's name is not on it, I ain't coming. So you get an invitation to attend the opening of Parliament. Your wife's name was on it,
no,
but
I went and asked for an
but
invitation
who
for her.
else went in there that in a member elected or appointed? No, who else went in there?
I didn't know them. I only found out who they were when overheard the police complaining about who they were because they're strangers to me. Because I don't mix with that crowd. I didn't like honestly. I did not know them. I could not identify them. It is the police that identified them, and I was, people say good old time malicious, and I was overhearing. Um,
You are Bajan. You're Bajan, right? You're
yeah,
Bajan.
I was overhearing the conversation,
Yes.
and that got me vexed because there we go, and the police were angry because they were saying, "Look, we got to be best handing on them and locking them up, and now we got to be in here protecting them." That was a direct quote from one of the
Yeah.
policemen.
Yeah.
Um,
But
and I felt for them. I felt their hurt because here we are going out there, just like the one that when the guy had his birthday party during COVID, and the police went and said, "No, you can't do the people get locked up for opening the side door to them shop." And the fellow opened a whole area and put down chairs and tables and stuff for birthday party. And then when the police come and said, "No, sir, you can't do that," he up this phone, called PM, and the police constable. I don't know what happened to him. I would like to find out because he had more guts than 90% of the force. He told the prime minister, "I don't take instructions from you." So then she turned and get somebody who gives him instructions. And then the people down there laugh at the police with their tails between their legs, living um, down there. That will always be etched in my mind. You cannot humiliate the police in that manner in front of criminals.
yes,
As a matter of
yes.
fact, you do not humiliate police in front of anybody.
Anybody,
If
anybody.
the police do wrong, You take them aside and you deal with them. Because if you find that they are humiliated and in front of people, they're likely not to do the job that they're for fear of being humiliated again.
Correct, correct, correct. Well,
So
Caswell,
you take them.
one other thing before I bring Glenn in very quickly. You know that when we as preachers mess up, and you know what I mean by mess up, right?
Yes.
You've seen the several incidents, both locally and internationally, where a preacher messes up, and people rake them over the coal, Caswell, to the point where they get relieved of their. Some of them even lose the churches, Caswell, because they play the fool and mess up. All right. But we have leaders in this country, and I'm not talking about spiritual ones now. We got political leaders in this country that mess up and get promoted. And I can
But
just leave that there.
but I
Because
can tell you,
Glenn coming in to help us deal with some of
they
this.
seek out the ones that they know will mess up. Because I have information about a particular one who messed up before he was selected as a candidate. And at the time, I used to speak to the Attorney General, and I said to him, but he was Attorney General then, and I told him, this is the reason why this man should not be a candidate. And I gave him the background. He might end up being a candidate nonetheless. Because when he came back to me, tell me the leader already knew the man's character. So that is what we have, as I say, no moral minimum. We will do anything to keep a seat and to get one. And as a result, this country, look at little children head at school when they come. But if you say a little girl with her hair plaited and you know she looks weird, she looks odd. Children with her head blue, pink, all kind of fancy things. The dwellers behind the parents not below the thing, and the body ain't telling them because the teachers dare not challenge the children. You know, all you're supposed to go in there and teach a subject. But me tell you something. I went to a school where they taught you more than reading, writing, arithmetic, and chemistry and physics and math. The teachers to be men. But of course, they got women there, no, but the teachers to be men. Glenn can tell you that. We were taught to be leaders.
Y'all are both Combermerians.
Of course.
Of course.
But okay,
Mm.
let me turn
You,
off
you
my
can't you
camera.
can't
Let me
can't
turn
hear
off
no
my
voice.
camera. Yeah, let me turn off my camera. Slip out from this one because I'm a Arizonian.
We
But
You you
listen,
sympathize
you
with you. We sympathize
you
with
would
you.
have made an
okay, thank you.
you would have made an excellent
Excellent
Colombian,
Combermerian.
like your brother.
Well, listen, Caswell, let's welcome Glenn because Glenn, I know you've been listening in. I think this is a very critical matter that we're dealing with tonight. We've been dealing with the matter of crime and violence over the last several weeks. We have been awaiting comments to be made by this body, next body. We went through Beryl not hearing from the ministers who are responsible for the area or even the director of what you call it, disaster management. We went through all this matter to do with crime and violence. I am asking, and maybe you can thing me. I'm hearing a little bit of an echo, Glenn. I believe because you have your earphone. Because if you
Yeah.
don't have your earphone, then there's a speaker live in your space. Um, so make sure your earphone is plugged in good, so we don't get that little feedback. But I am not hearing it now. It seems that whatever you
Okay.
did, you corrected it. Um,
Okay.
but I don't recall, and both of you gentlemen can advise me, but I don't recall hearing a word from the Attorney General as yet. I don't recall. All right,
That's
but
probably
let me welcome you, Glenn, to the Marcy Week show tonight. I know we've begun hot. Caswell has come in. I was the opening bowler. I can bowl off swingers, in swingers, bouncers, and yorkers. But Caswell come in and he let go a couple of beamers just now, and
But
I tell you, and they were below shoulder level, so I don't think they were calling the ball on it. All right. So welcome, Glenn. Welcome to the show tonight.
thank you, and I'm very happy to be joining such a illustrious company.
Oh
And
dear. He
but
mean you, Caswell. He mean you, not
and
he mean you, boy. You was a senator.
and
I guess said it yet.
and said not only that, not illustrious, but such as we would have said in Chapel Gap, horse stylish bowling that y'all came down with. But let me warn you, real cricket I was a pretty decent batsman in cricket, but
Okay, good.
I was an out and out pelter. Pelter
Okay.
fast and loud.
You was a chucker
No, no, I was a pelter. Check over. So I intend to maintain that similar approach tonight.
tonight. Well, before you
I
shift into that, let me address Carson. You're asking me there about what about the book. We'll come back to the book. Gentlemen, I don't know if you all have seen that video circulated about
Or
a
the
book
back
when it
door?
is with the back door. We'll come back to that in a few minutes, Carson, and we'll touch on it because we want to just keep the show moving in terms of the schedule that we have. So
I got two
let's
front
welcome
listen.
blind. The, why don't you behave yourself,
No, but
Blaine?
look,
God bless you, man.
like I do.
Welcome,
thank
man.
you. Good to be here. And I'm glad to be. I'm glad to make my contribution to what I think is one of the most important debates, public discussions we either have had, we are having, or we should have. Because, like I mentioned in a different context in the other show, this government, this prime minister too, is showing a reluctance to come up with any meaningful approach, policy, suggestions, techniques to deal with the most important aspect of any country's life. It's its security and its safety. That's the first thing a government's supposed to do. And to see it being neglected both administratively, operationally, and clearly in leadership is really, really is quite sad. I think this is a further beginning of the decline of the institutions involved. Because I listened to most of all of the prime minister's presentation. I don't recall too many references being made to the police service of Barbados. I don't know if you all did because it really was a struggle to listen for nearly 30 minutes of that contribution. It really was a struggle. But I like to listen to these things because I like to hear them for myself. But really, I would not have chosen to if I did not have to, if I didn't feel obligated, so I better inform myself. And therefore, don't expect the prime minister to apologize. I've known the prime minister fairly close to 1985, 86. I never heard her once apologize for anything done or said. I've heard her, even especially in government, I've heard her said, the most I've heard her said, but we don't always get it right. And we keep trying, but we never said we're wrong, we're sorry, let's start from. So don't expect it
That's a
like this.
fact.
Don't. It's not. My analysis of her persona, her personality, is that she's a type A female, and through sheer force of strength of person who believe in themselves and their rightness and their intelligence and their power, that is it, and they do not compromise to anybody in that regard. If you read the literature on personality, the personality you'll find type A female. So don't. And I've seen her. Privately, I've seen her publicly, I've seen her around the cabinet table for 10 years, I've seen her in discussion at party, I've seen her, and she will overwhelm you on any occasion if she can. Whether she knows what she's talking about, she will try to talk the most and the longest and overwhelm you. And I've heard the Prime Minister on many times say that used to have to tell Prime Minister after, Molly, give me a chance, let me talk, it's my subject, wait. And that was commonplace. But talking about no. But no, she's had the leadership. And I would have thought that given her last poor performance in that press statement, where she had AG Marshall and City Minister Dugan as props, that she was, and where she offered nothing of substance in the country, hungry for information, begging for leadership, desperate for guidance. Give us some hope, give us some policy, some program that know where we're going, know what's happening. No, we were just left flat. And the most she came up with was this had the audacity to say that a police organization which has been around, I think, said I think 1832 or 35, one of the third oldest organized police in the world. First was Scotland Yard, then there's another one, I forget where it was, and now the police. And to say that we don't have to go back and after they are making key recommendations for operations in Barbados and policies and strategies and techniques. I felt disgusted for a country which is supposed to have become a republic. But don't forget, the republic was handled as shabbily, as awkwardly, as confusedly as most things thereafter. So this is far for the course. And sorry for what I'm say, but the only good thing that came of that original thing on the 4th, I think, of July was that the setup of this serious crime and gang unit. Sorry, that was it. And this with the assistance of an organization called IPAS, International Police Assistance Service, coming out of the UK, coming out of Scotland Yard in Britain. So I thought by this time around, she would have given us more detail, more indication. By now, have a policy, said something about our own police service. We will have to operationalize it unless we're going to import policemen. I know we are short, but that's not short to one important that we're talking about doing with residents for the population side. But instead of that, we got nothing of significance, nothing that advanced the process that gave us the indication that the government was seriously thinking about this for anything. Now imagine this. They bribed with the IMF that they spent 2 years, at least 2 years in preparation for putting this in the hands of the IMF, for writing off the debt, for doing all the things that we are now being suffering austerity for. Took 2 years. Am I to believe that they have not given any prior thought to how they would deal with serious crime and gangs, having done such a severe job of attacking the previous government on the very same question of crime of violence? I refuse to believe that. But then when now the Prime Minister come for her national broadcast, and I felt, well, with no props, no Minister Good Lane, no Minister Duguay, no Attorney General. I said, okay. And she made it, she said that she took the very unusual step of writing on her own thoughts. She took the very unusual step of writing her own thoughts. Let me say something related to that. I think that refusal to write down her own thoughts is a sign of indiscipline, lack of preparedness, and lack of studiousness. Because
I made
all
a note of that same thing.
it,
Uh,
it, I,
that
I,
struck
I,
me.
I,
That struck
I
me.
mean, as a believer, and unfortunately, because she's such an excellent presenter publicly, but I know I've seen her in that presentation go out outside the floors of the House of House Assembly, um, waiting to make, and she'd be up and down rehearsing like I would, or you do a recitation of poem. So it's not anything flowing from the muses or the ether. She firstly rehearsed it. But when she said she was going to write, I said, aha, today we're going to have a structured, coordinated, systematic approach, like all the other leaders have done. Because those leaders in the past have observed them very clearly. And certainly from the ones that was closer to Prime Minister Tom Adams and Prime Minister Arthur, the more important the occasion was, the more time they spent in preparing it right now. The more time they spent in choosing their words very carefully, because every word must say exactly what they want and convey the message. Right? So I said, oh, the prime minister up in the game this time. She go in a minute. But then what would he have? Unstructured, rambling, no focus. I call it a verbal uh, a verbal cooked rice. You're throwing everything. You're cooking rice. You know, a cooked rice. You would know about a cooked rice, Freddie. Your mother, I'm sure, cooked rice at home. We are put every
I
person in
know
the pot.
about a cook up rice, but my mom used to do more pilau.
Oh, no, okay. So same thing, same thing, only different. But it was
Uh,
because there was at the end of the day, you just had a taste of lots of things, not very pleasant, but not meaningful. So, as for example, she said that she is gonna um, call someone 5 minutes of prayer, and 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 then church service over the weekend. Too symbolic Too symbolic gesture. I don't think she understands what the word symbolic means. Symbolic means it's a representation of something, but not the thing itself. No, it's just a visual image or whatever, or image, something that represents the real thing, but not the real thing itself. That's why, for example, you have the cross that represents Jesus. You'll have The national anthem is a symbol of the sovereignty and the national and the nation of Barbados. So this so not but the symbol cannot be the real thing, only represents the real thing. So from the time I heard she said it's gonna be a symbol, I said, here we go, downhill from here on. And she made, last time she criticized she blamed the anger and anxiety in the country on cell phones. But she did not, if you know the baker, she did not give any authoritative information, no study, no survey, no empirical evidence, no data. They not quote any, so that is her own. She thinks it, she says it, and that makes it what it is in her mind. And so today, last time, then she went on, added drug abuse, gangs, some other minor issues, but nothing to give you a coherent picture of what the next step was. That is why my title for tonight was given as a quote. What was it all about, PM? What was it all about, PM? It's a throwback to a very popular song in 1966. What's it all about, Alfie? With
Yes, I
Harold
remember it.
David and Burt Bacharach. So what was
Yes.
that? What was that
Yeah.
public broadcast, national broadcast about? Rambling, unfocused, not giving any clear indication where you're going. And she talks about, you made a point too. She talks about you must return the children to a clear sense of right and wrong, good and bad, right and wrong. But she was Minister of Education between 1994 and 2001. She has been Prime Minister for 7 years. She's been Prime Minister for 6 years. And in charge of the very same ministry where she had direct influence and policy. Why was there no policy taken there? Why was there, and the society would have changed since then? Why there has been none since then? And you're voicing this wishful thinking. And now she talks about a secular society. You can't expect a secular society grows out of the fact of the sociology on secular society is that because when a society becomes more educated formally, it becomes more secular, less attention is paid to the religious thing. Not because all religions has become more secular, not because we turn worthless and bad minded and the worst people in the world. It's just that as we have become more educated, like other people, like all societies, we look for explaining life and living habit. We look to science and education to give us a reasoned interpretation as to what of our worldview on our circumstances. That is the reason for secularism. So it's not that all is gone well, we abandon God, or that we turn to those things more than for any superstition. Because in the early days, men would look at if there was rain or thunder or fall or a storm, you would look at this, you'd talk with the gods are angry. So people rely on superstition. Next, they rely on philosophy, um, they rely on the arts, history, and now science. So that is right. So a secular society means that you have less regard for the religious. You are not asking a secular society to do what the government has failed repeatedly. You're asking us to pray symbolically for 5 minutes on Saturday, then go to church symbolically again, but leaving and then the fundamental problem, the fundamental issues of the society. And that way, I think the Prime Minister has failed Barbados once again. I think this presentation, which I had hoped would have been an improvement on the last one, as you got information and thinking and presentation and logic, which is what you're supposed to do in leadership. Um, was badly lacking. What I think what she's done, she's sought to change the responsibility to the society. Government haven't failed repeatedly since 2018, especially to meaningfully grapple with crime and violence. Is no shifting the blame again. Is not never government's fault, and it's never her fault, because my information is that some of the others would like to speak up, but they don't get a chance. They're not expected, they're not encouraged, they're not tolerated. So
Allowed.
allowed to whatever. And I've seen her, I've seen the Prime Minister in action, in cabinet. I've seen her also in security, even prime minister. She can wear you down. She's persistent, driven, passionate, voluble, long. She unless you're trying to wear you down. So there's the same thing with intimidation or just the thing of passive resistance.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
is very possible that are people are biding their time.
yeah, yeah.
Don't forget this very same prime minister became leader of the opposition after 2008, and then was taken out into I think it was probably early 2010.
And I think the
Same,
Attorney General and a couple others were involved in that at the time. Was that not
uh,
true?
true. I probably say I was part of that inner planning from the very beginning.
Hmm.
I and she did not have a clue because of the measures we took. The attorney general, yes, but then it was a big group, but then you read it down as you got more and more sensitive and fair close. In order to prevent any leaks, we eliminated certain person who would probably carry back a message or lick them out or take off.
Yeah,
But it came about because of lack of unsatisfactory performance in the administration of the affairs of
of the
the
party.
party of the
Yeah.
party. And it is very possible that these same persons, in the same way that our slaves during slavery found way of resisting the system and the masters in their own way, in their own circles, and because of their given situation. Don't forget, as the old people say, when your hand is in the lion's mouth, you have to take it out slowly, right? So it is not beyond that. But the point is that the country is suffering badly because of it.
Well,
Really, really.
let,
Go ahead.
let me ask Caswell. Well, let me bring Caswell in here for a minute. Caswell, let me ask you this because Glenn made some telling points in terms of the content. Because as you're speaking, Glenn, I'm scanning the transcript. As you know, YouTube has the transcript of everybody's speech. So that's how I obtain the transcript. But as I look through this transcript, Caswell, did you hear anything mentioned to address the accessibility to guns, the importation of guns, or the accessibility and importation of drugs? Any action taken or
But
planned
I
to
didn't
deal with
hear
that?
anything mentioned about customs, because the importation of guns and drugs are not the police problem. The police deal with it when they get the importation is customs. You have to strengthen customs first. I didn't hear a word about customs because the guns come through either the airport, the seaport, or the fishing landing sites.
Or Port Ferdinand or one of them got
Yeah,
come
but
in the country somehow.
yeah, yes, that the definite port. I understand a lot come to that way, but so you must strengthen customs. As a matter of fact, what they proposed when they were dealing with is to have the officers be roving customs officers and not stationed at Port Ferdinand and Port St. Charles. They would only go down there when they hear a boat coming in. And by the time they get down there, the boat would be offloaded. That was a proposal from this administration that the unions had to fight against because they wanted to take the officers away from there. Because by the time the officers get down there, when you report the boat coming in, the boat will be offloaded, all the guns will be off, and all you will be having be a lot of drunken passengers. You know, over years,
Freddie,
over
so
years,
now,
we
finish, go
have been
ahead.
saying to them that customs should be at the fish landing sites, and ever so often skin up a boat. You don't know which one because men go up there on the high seas, and somebody tell them, look, take these guns in, take these drugs in. I know your mother lives. So if they know, and the father, you think I can let you kill my mother? I can burn the guns in the bottom of my fish. And but no customs officer has ever been told you are stationed at Bridgetown Land Fish at Oysters or anywhere 6 months or anywhere. You don't have to search every load of fish, but the people who are bringing the guns will not, or the drugs will not know when you're going to search or where you're going to search. So that would be a deterrent. But no, never once. I'm there telling them to go down there and delay every day landing the fish every day. Like I said, no. be present, and they said, any, many, many more, I can take out you. I searching you today. So a fellow will not know. The fellow out there and they see that is directing those men and telling them, look, I
Yes.
know where your mother lives. I know of a case with a customs officer who had an allergy to marijuana. This is years ago when I used to work at the airport. And when marijuana and somebody bite my he knows you start running, he's just sneezing, all kind of thing. And they threatened him. They told him your father lives on Mason Hall Street. And if you don't stop interfering with drugs, we can burn those within it because the father was in a wheelchair. So all you have to do is to put mechanisms in place. She has done nothing, sir. She has left the place open so that those thugs that she deals with, and they can say that because I got video with she and Bunky and all of them calling she the general. She was the general before me. And they were canvassing for her back then. You think
Yep.
that people who
Yeah,
canvass for you and give you campaign donations usually expect something in return. The merchants want contract. The builders, they want some world works. Everybody wants something. One fella, then he thought he was going to be a minister. Then he just got fella give him money. And then he didn't become a minister for money. And then put in court for it. You expect something for something. So
Something
they poor,
coming back.
poor.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Absolutely. Glenn, you were trying to make a point just now too.
yes, I think Kaz was making some very fundamental points that we
Hmm.
have overlooked. Both the public, I think some of the public used to overlook it. But I think the government, either had this naivete or that's as part of his particular narrow, superficial, biased look at the situation. Those institutions that Kaz were mentioned are crucial because there's a fundamental point. Uh, Crime is universal. There's crime all over the world. Crime because crime has been part of mankind's being for the very beginning. Crime. All right. Not only that, because crime is a universal activity, it also means that it also shows that crime, from my studies, crime is the most highly organized business in the world. Crime, crime does crime, crime does not operate. You call it organized crime. But every crime is organized in some form or fashion. But the whole it's a tier of systems, and all is organized because they're dealing with they're providing services and goods that are illegal but are in demand, and therefore they have to be highly organized to be able to bypass system and get their business, their supply to meet the demand and collect their money because they are business without with generally so little interference, so little disruption because they're very highly organized. They're probably more highly organized than the Secret Service with Trump situation. Yeah, no, you have to even step back, like how the guns, the drugs, the disposition of these things. It's a fabulous network that
Yes.
has to be taken care. It
Yeah.
really is,
Yeah. You know,
right?
Glenn, I've been watching some videos. Of course, anything anybody does, people will either agree with or disagree with, no matter what you do. I mean, Jesus did things, and there were people who agreed with him and disagreed with him. So I don't put it past people agreeing or disagreeing with any of us. But I've been watching some videos recently concerning El Salvador. I don't know how many people have watched it. El Salvador was the most dangerous country in the world. And the president who took office, I think it was either 2018 or 2019, he took office, the current president, within the last 3 to 4 years, has moved El Salvador, which was controlled by gangs, Glenn. I'm sure you have done your own research and you've done your own watching and so forth of these videos. He has transformed El Salvador from being the most dangerous country in the world to being the safest country in the Western Hemisphere. And he did it by activating a agreement, or should I say, an arrangement between the police and the military in dealing with the matter. He built a special prison for the gangs that now holds about 74,000 of them. And of course, the what you call these people that Caswell, these folk that um, want to have everybody's rights considered
Human right,
except the victim.
human rights, human
Human right
rights. Yeah.
groups, chastising him and quarrel with him for that, but nobody ain't paying attention to the girls that are being raped and the children that are being killed. You don't hear the human rights people talking anything about them. But anyhow, and then the other day he called a cabinet meeting and a meeting with all of his auxiliary staff and administrators, and he extracted the attorney general. He gave the attorney general an order, and he said to the attorney general, I am mandating you to carry out an investigation on every single one of these people to find out if they are involved in any corruption of any kind, and we'll imprison them. I was really looking to hear something from the prime minister along these kind of lines, actions that would be taken. But I guess Caswell, Glenn, I guess she can't do that because of some of the features we just saw and some of the involvements and relationships she has.
Look,
I,
you remember Al Capone in the United States? You might not remember me, you're too young, but
No, I
the
remember Al
story.
Capone very well. I remember Al Capone.
Al Capone killed, he was a gang leader, mob leader, and they could not track him down for killing a single soul. Mind you, he dispatched a lot of people to see their maker. But Al Capone was filthy rich. And the government decided, look, we're going after his wealth. You got to show me where you get that from, right? And because he could not demonstrate where he got his loot, his wealth, he get locked up, He get locked up for not paying taxes on that money that he had.
yeah, you were making a point I referred to earlier, Kaz, when I said you have to disrupt, attack the system because
Yeah.
it
And
being
that
so
is
well
why I was
organized.
making that's why I was making it, because you mentioned it.
You go ahead. I say if because like I said, crime is so well organized internationally. You have with at least a corresponding level of organization and intensity and structure and purpose and objectives. They have their array to get their goal, which is make money.
Look,
You have to have
we have
your
people at
goal of
Brad now.
eradicating them.
We have people at Brad now that the prime minister is defending. That in similar positions as Al Capone. But not in the killing part, they don't have to kill anybody yet. But they cannot account for their wealth. They cannot account for it. You got a civil servant earning $4,000 a month camp or $5,000 a month camp. You don't get $1 million saved. Even if you're saving all and wife the supporting you, you are not going to save $1 million. But we got millionaires down there, and nobody's doing. And the prime minister is talking foolishness about and covering for them. Why would the prime minister cover for wrongdoers in public service? I, as a trade unionist, should be trying to cover for them, and I'm not. I will not condone wrongdoing. When they come in the wrong side, up to yesterday, tell the fellow boy return save your pension. Because what he did was wrong. I
Right,
couldn't
right,
I
right.
couldn't I
But
couldn't put up a proper defense for him, and I don't think anybody could. And I said to him, your best bet is to retire from the public service. At least they will save you a pension that way.
But gentlemen, I
Along
know.
home.
I mean, we can deal with so much on this, and Glenn, just
I I I,
stay with
I have
us.
yeah I have one. Let me make one other point here
Yeah,
on
yeah,
the prime
because
minister's presentation.
I got Paul in the rating room, and I
Okay.
don't know if you saw a presentation he made on Sunday evening, a very powerful presentation in terms of addressing the root causes of some of the issues, and we want to bring him in to join us.
Right.
But you go ahead and make
I think
your last point there.
I think mine would be a nice segue into him seeing that he's
Wonderful,
of the
wonderful.
religious world because I was asking, we had appointed two religious advisors.
Yeah.
Yes,
Have you
yes,
have you heard anything of them since their appointment? I haven't. I'm wondering,
but
did the prime minister condescend to consult these two religious advisors before she brought this talk about
this
her plan
this
of
thing.
action. Her plan of action consisted only of 5 minutes prayer in the middle of the day and church service.
No, no.
Is that were their advice? What are they doing? Or I suspect, if not all this, if not all, most if not all of it has come out of old prime ministers thinking and being, because that is her nature, that's her personality, and she really is not seeking to have it anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
Forgive
No,
me,
I,
but
I, I
forgive me
agree.
for butting in, though. But I'll tell you, look through the list of appointees in positions in Barbados, chairman of boards, all kind of stuff, and you will see a lot of priests and pastors are under the government stamp. You see, when you are inside, you can't make noise. You gotta keep quiet because you lose your little pick, you lose your little standing. But you want standing for God. You don't want standing for the government. But you want to hold on to that pick. You just go through and you see who are the people appointed by the prime minister, the head boards and other entities in Barbados. I got a
Yeah.
list, but I can let Paul talk and we will talk later.
Well, let's welcome you, Paul. Paul, God bless you. Great to have you joining us in the Marcy Week Show. You've come on to a tremendous match. There's a lot of fast bowling. I can't find a spinner. I can't find a spinner for the evening.
But
All I see is all I see is a lot
you
of
ain't gonna find
fast
another, you ain't gonna
bowlers.
find a spinner now. I'm very
But
sorry.
Paul, we used to have four speedsters. You remember the West Indies teams used to have four speeders. It used to be paced like fire. You remember that statement? But welcome, Paul, Reverend Paul Leacock. Welcome to the Martha Week Show. We had a great presentation from you on Sunday evening, going to the root of things, and it's great to have you with the show tonight, sir. Would you just greet the folk here, our loyal opposition, and just share with us what you want to, you is on your heart to share with us this evening?
Thank you, Dr. Ferdinand. I'm glad to see my good friend, Caswell Franklin here, and Glide, of course.
Good to see you.
Always
Welcome.
good to hear your sagacious advice and counsel. And of course, I miss sitting with Caswell and hearing him pour forth in the various forums that we used to have. Uh, I can't help going back to what I stated on Sunday night, because I find that Ms. Kim Ramsey's statement is quite profound and very germane to the discussion that we are having. And if I can quote her, if you don't mind, it says, "The people we catch are the ones at the lower end of the scale, the poor, black street boy is the visible face of this gun problem. But the problem may be deeper because it's a hierarchy, and the persons that are committing the crime are at the bottom of the chain. The face behind the problem is not visible. The visibility is the end of it, not the beginning. At the back, the real army, talking about organized, is the ones who do not come forward, who are not in the court system. What is telling about Miss Ramsey's statement, and she ought to know as one of the chief criminologists in Barbados. And what stuck out for me is the fact that she says it's a hierarchy. And as long as you have a hierarchy, it means that there is a structured system, and she is clear that those who we are apprehending or attempting to apprehend, those whom we are pointing to, as the Prime Minister did in her last address, are really at the bottom of the chain. Who then are these uh, persons?
Hierarchy.
Who is the hierarchy? Uh, as Caswell was saying just now, if we are to find the root of this problem, we have to be more intentional, direct, and truthful. If if these gangs, if these guns are coming into the country, that's a governmental problem. That's not a street problem. You can't solve this by identifying a bulge in your son's pocket. That is nonsense. Well, where did he get the gun to bulge in his pocket? We have to be sincere about this. The successive commissioners of police have said the ports are porous. That is their statement. Well, if the ports are porous, and as Caswell pointed out, we have specific points of entry. That's a governmental problem. It means that customs is allowing things to pass through the ports, or when they have traversed to the places where they are to be unpacked, what is on the manifest should be in the containers. If it is not, something is wrong. Customs then have failed. And if customs have failed, that means the government has to correct that system. So therefore, if we're going to trace the root of the problem, and if we trace it to the port, we have to say who's controlling the port, and the government is responsible for the ports. If we say that the police are not policing or apprehending persons in the way that they should, if there's failure in the police, if criminals can laugh in the face of police and send them back to the station, or to say to them, you can leave because we already get the call and we clean. If police officers are protecting persons in highly evolving crime, mixing and mingle with those who are supposed to be honored and regarded by the country to lead it. And if we say police are failing in any respect, that's a government problem. If the Attorney General is saying, for example, we have been able to take several guns off the street, 50, 60, 100, 200 guns off the street. You took guns, you have 200 guns you've reclaimed. Where are the gunners? Where are the people who held guns? Did you find them on the floor? So therefore, that's another problem. If you are allowing persons who have been charged with murder to walk out of the court on bail, that's a judicial problem, and that's a problem of government who sets those terms that the judges have to go according to. So it's leading back to government again. So if you want to trace the root from any direction, if you want to deal with the sociological problems, it all points back to government. But it's not enough for us to say it points back to government, because that sounds too broad and it sounds too big, and you can't unpack that. I'm going to speak from a Christian perspective and from a pastoral perspective. If you open the door to Belial, to idolatry, if you open the door to certain types of debauchery, sin in your country, you cannot complain for the other things that will follow. It is clear to us, if we trace it from its genesis, that the escalation of the crimes in this country have come about because we have begun to relax our values, as Miss Ramsey also said. You can't remove the sovereignty of God in the unfinished Constitution. Before the Constitution can be written, the first thing you remove in your preamble is the sovereignty of God. Well, if you remove the sovereignty of God, who's ruling? Who is government subject to? You're somebody taken off of office. Okay. If you go to the oath of office that this government is proposing to be used when prime ministers and ministers take the oath, and they say, I solemnly swear, and they say, so help me God, there is a clause in it that says to be omitted in the affirmation. So there's not, so help me God. There's no sovereign, which means reign over. We are going to be our own gods. And in discussing the Constitution, those who are responsible in this commission that is supposedly holding town hall meetings, they shout down anybody that talk about God to say emphatically this is a secular country. But I don't think they understand what secular means. As Brother Glein was saying earlier, secular is anything when you remove all of God from it. What remains is secular. Is that what Barbados is? Is that what you're saying? Well, why then are you calling for prayer? Why then are you calling for the religious institutions to do A, B, and C when they were not good enough to be open during COVID? Ministers beg this government. People say, "Where's the church?" Church don't run to every press conference and call the media every time they're assisting anybody, because that's not their mandate. You don't let your left hand know what your right hand do. But we called, but the Caswell can bear me out, that we begged to be involved, to help, to reach out. Let's open back the schools. Let's feed people. Many children, the first meal of the day or the best meal of the day is school meals. Let's during this COVID, let's use the churches as to give food, to give help. We were relegated to third sector, whatever that is. And you cannot remove God, and you cannot bring in exotic debauchery, and you cannot allow laws against your very constitution, a welcome stamp visa, where you would now permit persons to come into the country against your law and constitution. You cannot do those kinds of things and not expect that there will be a trickle-down effect. And then you say, well, we have to have better values. What do you mean? What do you mean? I took the time to listen to the speech of the Prime Minister, like you did, Brother Glein. And it's amazing to me that you're talking about values that we ought to have, that there's an absence, she says, of religious and moral grounding for children to teach them right and wrong. Where? When you have taken away power from teachers to even school, to speak to children forcibly, when you have intentionally begin to bring into the schools Trojan horses that will undermine the moral fabric of the country. You cannot turn away from God and expect good. I close with this. We have seen from scripture, every time a king turned away from God, turned to idolatry, the rest of the country went to pot. And the same is true here. We are seeing, and if we want to be nice, we can say the Prime Minister is not to blame. In the good old days, gentlemen, we would say the advisors to the king have certainly misguided the sovereign, because we cannot imagine the sovereign could do the things that they do. So we blame the advisors. Well, who are the advisors to government? We do not understand why certain people are in the Prime Minister's office. We're seeing a proliferation, and I'm not afraid or ashamed to say, of priests of oration, of persons who are practicing witchcraft, dark arts. We're seeing advisors, not that will give the best economic advice, best sociological advice, best political advice, best legal advice, but we are seeing we're seeing this bewitching way of governing, which turns into intimidation, and which turns into top-down force, coercive types of policies that must be obeyed. And that always happens when we turn away from God. We lose our humility, and we use our character, and we turn to other forms of governance. And I am saying that one of the root causes is that we have turned away from God, and therefore the values that underpin our society, and we are turning to other gods. And those other gods, she spoke also that we should let foreign influence govern us. So why are we forcing certain immoral principles on our children? Why are we forcing gender fluidity? Why are we forcing all kinds of education that will undermine the values of our children, to teach them that they can choose what gender they want? Why are we turning our sex education, our home and family life education, into comprehensive sexual education? All these are abdicating the religious principles on which we have been built, and government must take responsibility for that. I'll pause there.
Well,
Very
thank
well
you.
said.
Yeah, very, very well said, Paul. I mean, I'm almost tempted to ask you to send that to me. Send that to me on my WhatsApp. To be honest with you, but Paul, and Caswell, Glenn, you all can jump in at any point in time. But I am a real respecter of our national symbols. One of them is the national anthem. One of them is the national pledge, and one of them is the flag. And I believe that when this country became independent, Glenn, you would have been probably very active back then, in terms of politically and in association, because that was the Barra era. And I think Tom Adams was the leader of the Barbados Labour Party at the time. I'm a very young fella at that time. I was just about 10 years old. I think I was born in 56, so I would have been about 10 years old. Um, but the national anthem was conceived. Um, I'm just looking back here. I Let me make sure. Irvin Bergy. Have I got it right? Have I got it right there, Glenn?
Ir- Irving,
So you
same man who wrote Island in the Sun and
right,
Yes,
Irving
right.
Berger, yeah.
Now
Uh,
and the second verse, I referenced the first verse already for the night, but the second verse enshrined in our national anthem, one of the sovereign symbols of Barbados. The Lord has been the people's guide for past 300 years. With him still on the people's side, we have no doubts or fears. Now, I don't know, Paul, that the national anthem has been uh, restructured. I know they're trying to restructure the um, Constitution, and I observe what we mentioned that in one of the town hall meetings that we attended. But clearly, when I look at the Prime Minister's presentation, I'm just trying to choose my words very carefully. I'm amused that she is even asking us to even have what you said, 5 minutes of prayer, five
yeah.
minutes,
reflection.
Symbolic,
5 minute reflection, right? And
quiet
then
reflection.
a quiet reflection, and then I think a Sunday day of prayer, something like that.
Right.
Um, how many of you all remember the opening of Parliament for 20 from the elections of 2022? You all remember the not the is the opening of Parliament? They had it in Freedom Park. Well, that's where it was, in Freedom Park. How many of
Um,
you all remember? You remember who prayed there?
Hmm.
Y'all remember who prayed there?
no, help us.
All the members of Parliament. In the table of precedent, Glenn, you can correct me if I'm wrong. In the table of precedent, the Barbados Evangelical President is listed. Am I correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Hadn't a thing to do that day. I don't even know if he was invited because he wasn't the ombudsman at the time. And now you're coming to the people after you have, in my view, at that time, disrespected the spiritual leadership of the country in a most important and significant event. Because I remember, Caswell, I don't know how many of you all remember. You remember Bishop Jerry Seals' warning to the government in 2018 when they won the election on Bay Street?
Yeah, yeah.
You remember that, Glenn?
Yeah, I remember that well.
When they won 30 seats, and he told them the people of Barbados will remind you. I remember that very, very, very well. And now you are coming, in my view, to insult the spiritual intelligence of Barbadians, to address one of the major crises this country has with a 5 minute reflection and a Sunday service.
because they absolve themselves of any responsibility. I fail to understand how. I mean, we have no ideas, no intellect, no brains. We have the respiratory system. We have other bodies that coordinate. I remember there was a meeting some time ago of the CARICOM leaders, in which they declared that crime and violence was a public health issue. That's what they say, a public health issue. And there's nothing that we can find among ourselves. It's as though we are living in some fairy tale land, and we expect that the crime will fall itself. And these things will no longer happen here, happen but never in Barbados. Those days are gone. It's happening here now. It's growing deeper and deeper and more entrenched. And if the longer you take to tackle, the more they're digging deeper and deeper, and it costs you more, and money, lives out in trying to eradicate it, because it's people fight their own existence against the country. But we are not given a commensurate amount of strength and organization and push and enthusiasm. The police, when last have you heard the police come and say anything about it? About the issues, their policing, even in crop over, you don't hear anything. There's no sense of the police being in charge. That's the point I'm making. There's no sense. And
Right.
I shudder to think how much politicking is going on with the police now. Don't forget that whole issue of policing has been redesigned, corrupted, defiled, whatever, debased, whatever you could call it. It really is a sad case that, along with the civil service, this government has deliberately gutted all of our major institutes of their persona, their standards, their principles, their practice, etc., and they just replaced it with consultants who
Well,
owe nobody any allegiance.
May,
well,
may, may I add one thing here, Dr. Ferdinand?
yeah, yeah.
Because we cannot be one dimensional in this hierarchical system as we discuss it. Because while we are talking about the problem firmly at the feet, if not in the hands of government, we must also mention corporate Barbados, who is extremely complicit in this as well. And government can have some strange bedfellows when they're ready.
Well, I was just about to ask Caswell, in terms, you mentioned the hierarchy, and Caswell has always been telling us about, I would have to say, the top down involvement of people, and so on. But you mentioned a hierarchy, and of course, if there's there a higher, and I spelt it Higher. Okay, that's how I spelled it. Hierarchy. Okay, because we talked about, when you came on, you talked about what's her name again?
Ramsey.
Yeah, what she said concerning the face that we have given to the issues, but in truth and in fact, we're dealing with a hierarchy. And I wondered, Caswell, what are your thoughts concerning what Reverend Leacock has said regarding this matter of the hierarchy?
Well,
Because I believe this is one area relative to how we are getting these things, these guns and all this into the country.
I couldn't agree with him more. I'll tell you why. They should have let fellas on the road with a gun. He eating ramen,
Hmm.
99 cents a pack, or 89 cents a pack, or something. So I hear the price is. If you cannot afford English potatoes, macaroni, a piece of fish, you can't afford a gun.
Correct.
You can't afford vegetables. You can't afford a gun. Where is he getting the gun from? Paul is absolutely right. Look, guns and drugs. One of my first jobs when I left school was importation. I worked as a customs clerk for a company. We used to get, and they were reputable, and they used to get cite drafts through the banks, or line of credit and all kind of stuff. You could get the money, but nobody gives you a line of credit for drugs. You got to pay the money up front. If you only have money to pay for ramming, you cannot have the money to pay for a $20,000 gun. And who can afford that gun? And then put it in the hands of these little youngsters who are mindless. A gun is making big, You'd be powerful when you got a gun. So those fellas become powerful. You're a little fella, little 76 pounds, not heavier than that. But then you got a gun, you're a big man. You feel like a ton. And you get that gun from somebody who's ever brought it in. Who is the person that brought it in? And I'm glad that you asked me that, because it's going to refer to something else that Paul said. Paul said it's the government's fault. It's a government problem. Because I can tell you something, there's something called a trusted trader in Barbados. This government introduced. Right? So what they do, they import their goods. And they tell the customs what they have in my container. Tell. The customs officer is now required to go to the place where the container is delivered, cut the seal, and go about business. He doesn't look in the container. He's not required to.
Correct. And bad. That's wrong.
Yeah, but it's happening in Barbados every day. And some of these trusted traders are people who just start importing. A trusted trader would have been a fellow who been imported over the years, and the customs find that he was a good man and he never treated honest or anything yet. There should be trusted traders. But you got people that set up an import business and become trusted traders immediately. What do you expect? The government is complicit in everything that is going wrong in society. And until we stop this nonsense, but I'm a B and I'm a D and I'm a Q, you will see this country continue to go down. And it will go down. And this thing, when people will start criticizing, what happened now? When they feel it in the belly. When the mothers go down the road and hold in the belly, hold in the womb, and because the child that came out of that womb gone to the earth. That's when I hear a little crowd. But we have too many. I just heard a little thing. Somebody sent me a thing that says somebody got shot or something. So go the square tongue tonight. I don't know. Every day you're hearing about somebody who got stabbed, killed, whatever. A golden square. Somebody can be stabbed in a golden square. I don't know if it's a fact. I guess somebody just WhatsApp that to me. All right, but except for the fact that government cannot be, or the police cannot be there at every instance to stop crime, we must not be able to facilitate the crime by putting the guns or allowing the guns to come in, because you are not doing anything to stop them. You are actually taking customs officers away from doing their duty, and then you take customs officers from doing their duty before I can bring a gun.
But it's worse than that, as well. It's worse than that. When a customs officer or a Coast Guard official revealed that a corporate yacht was filled with drugs, what happened to that man? What happened to him? In short order, he was demonized and removed. And all of a sudden, the story went off the national page. It wasn't cocaine anymore. It was marijuana. And it just disappeared. Who owned the yacht?
There's more fundamental thing than that, though. They claim that the marijuana was on the boat and they didn't smell it because they were trying to blame the black captain. Remember?
Exactly.
And around that same time, we had an instance in Miami where a Barbadian was held with drugs in a hotel room. The drugs were in plastic bags and wrapped up and all kind of stuff. and the maids outside in the corridor smell them. So I can inform the authorities. Now you're alongside marijuana on a boat and you can't smell it. The only explanation for that is that the people in the states were getting the better quality drugs, or the poor. That's why you can smell it. Because that can be that can be the only explanation. Because you can tell me that you ain't smell it, you don't know it on the boat, and you got nearly 10.
Freddie,
And these things were allowed to get away with. But you know
Yes,
something
Freddie,
about this. If
yes,
yeah,
you are
I
of
wanted,
certain
I
ilk,
wanted,
you
yeah.
don't
You
get
want
if
to
away
it,
with
jump in?
it.
yeah, if I might take the discussion to a slightly different angle. I, as I was discussing today, this whole plan of action, action plan with the Prime Minister came up, that put the emphasis on society, to save the society, and changing rather than her coming up with initiative, etc. I would say, well, if she was so serious about moments of quietude and contemplation and quiet, why doesn't she declare, why doesn't she shut down crop over for one day?
But
Right?
that's is
The fact
exactly
and
you.
fact. Yeah, but
You have
I was,
said something I thought, Glenn.
but I was saying, but I was told, no, it can't be done because crop over and festival becomes a major occasion for the laundering of money. A lot of facts are held with big things, but nobody, but it is a way because money, a lot of money passed its hands. Money which had to be stored, illegal money had to be stored, and couldn't be taken to the bank or declared. These facts are held to circulate, claims, wash, launder this money. So I'm saying that because the people, you talk about hierarchy, they're the wholesalers and they're retailers. The ones on the ground, they are the retailers. They're the fellas on the ground who they're the soldiers. Okay, so there's a separation of responsibility and rewards, etc. But the point is that it's all interconnected and related. They tell me even some stores downtown, restaurants are part of the system. Therefore, you hold an event to get lots of people to. It doesn't care if it makes money or you use the money, the people as a sham in order to recirculate money, etc. So that is another aspect we're dealing. That the crime is not as simple, it's not more sophisticated, and we need to be equally, if not even more sophisticated than the organized crime, even begin to cope with it. And I'm not getting the feeling that we've not even yet begun to prepare ourselves for that battle.
Glenn, you hit something on the head I wanted to talk about on one of these shows. The laundering of money and why government is so complicit with it. They pretend to put structures in place. Last week, my bank account was shut down. I got a couple of dollars on it. Nah, more. Why? Because I'm what they call a PEP, a politically exposed person. Because
Me,
I happen to have been in the Senate a couple of years ago. All
me
right.
Uh-huh.
too.
So now I have now to declare everything where I get every cent from, who
Wait, wait,
gives it
wait,
to
wait, wait,
me.
wait, 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 wait. Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. You have to declare.
Hmm.
What about them when they came to office?
They declare to themselves. They
Yeah,
declare to the prime. They
Is
declare to the
there
prime minister.
legislation, Caswell, in place to require you to do this?
I am looking for it because there was there's the anti-money laundering thing. I try to find. I haven't checked it out myself. That's why I haven't made a noise yet. Because I was never a
I I
political
I I
person.
I, I
And
I think
I
it
have.
happened that too here.
Hmm?
I
As well,
uh-huh.
I think it happened in that regard. It is
Yes.
the it is the PEP, political exports person, is all just know your customer and declaration that the Americans have insisted. I too myself have been declared a PEP, and I left the Senate in 2003. And there's one bank that I did where cannot get my name, has not been able to remove senator yet. I left the Senate in 2003. 21 years and still can't get my name of their roles, and I say get my letters, statements as senator. Been trying to get off for 21. But I'm saying so they want the Americans. So in order to have correspondent banking and meet the international, the regulations, the requirement. Therefore, we also had your children, you will be considered politically exposed, and therefore you're subject to scrutiny that you otherwise will not have. So
And
it's a policy. It's a
but the
policy of the.
reason
Go
the
ahead.
reason I raised it is because this was one of the campaign planks, Glenn, the matter of assets.
But within 90 days, they would have, I've gotten a feedback.
Yeah,
Within
yeah.
90 days, the government promised in their campaign that they would have integrity legislation on the books. Remember that? Because there was a piece of legislation passed by the Strat administration, had not come into force yet. And they said, no, I'll be not like that. That is foolishness. We can do it on. We can get that within 90 days, within 100 days, the first 100 days. That's what we're going to do. We said the first 100 days. Up to now, it is not on the books. Up to now.
Well, I can
So
tell
you
you
know,
why. I can tell you why
I, I,
because
I, I told them when it was being debated in the Senate, when it was, I said, listen to me, it will not see the light of day in this session or probably even in the next one. No way, because you fellas are paupers though, and you're gonna get rich first. I said that, and they called me to order, but I said it already. That is what is happening. You're gonna get rich first. And I
well,
can tell you why the government also is not really serious about money laundering and seeking out people who have illicit money. You remember recently we just get some plastic money? They
Mm-hmm.
brought in some containers. I saw when the containers came in. And you know they block off Robert Street and got the police to go down the road and reverse them into the town to buy stuff and watch. Enough containers of money. Containers full of new plastic money. If the government were serious about people with a lot of money that they can't put in the bank, they would have said, look, within 3 months, all of that new old money will be demonetized. You can't spend it within. People will go and take it from in the barns and with the barrels that they got it in and try to get in the bank. And the bank, when you bring in a couple of $1 million to exchange for the thing back and see where you get it from. They can't, they won't do it. They wouldn't dare do it because the people got the money who supporting them. Other
well, you
countries did
see,
it. India did
you
it.
see,
India started with a new rupee and give people a very short time to bring in the money that they got. Because if you don't bring it by that time, it ain't worth nothing, you know. But the government could have done that too, but the government would not do that. They've got too many people to offend.
I raise the matter because in my humble opinion and in my simplistic thinking, I don't need legislation to let people know what my assets are. If I am accusing the former administration of corruption, I don't need to wait for legislation to be put in place to tell the people of Barbados what my assets are coming into Parliament as a parliamentarian. If I am a person of integrity, if I'm a person of transparency and accountability, I can tell them I'm coming into office. I have so much and so much land. I have so much and so much in terms of bank account, business, whatever. I should be able to tell people that no problem because had they done that, they would have had better credibility, but they have not done anything up to now.
If they
Gentlemen,
if they did that, people will hold a benefit for them because they had nothing when they came
you
in.
mean
But
you mean a charity thing?
Yeah, a charity thing function so they could get something. The people that feel for them, they had nothing. A lot of them had nothing, not even a job. Now they're
but
rich.
um, I just want to say that this request for declaration of assets made me recall one of the most astonishing statements I've heard for a long time from parliamentarian. It's Minister Capital when she said in the newspapers that Barbados is not ready yet
Not ready
for Freedom
of
of Information
information.
Act.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we are not ready yet for a declaration of assets.
So we are
Thank
not
you.
ready for cybercrime bill either.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
Because it's too easy. It's too easy to do to be held to too much scrutiny. If you tell me if you are not even if the prime minister herself does not hold a press conference, does not subject herself to scrutiny and examination. She only held one sit down interview with a Barbados journalist in July 2018, 3 months after she became prime minister. One with David Ellis. When David pressed her, I remember it very because when David pressed her on some issue, she said, "Man, twice, man, you want indulge a one-upman shit now, one-up shit because you want to show that you better or good or better than me. Never again. And you can if you can't do that, if your ministers are not exposed to the basic questions of information, you will never be ready for Freedom of Information Act.
But watch, she like watch. Look at her press conference. Look at the pictures in the paper. She looks so forlorn, because she is managed. People say you gotta look so. You got to I remember seeing it once when Bill Clinton was president. You're supposed to do certain things for the public to see, and he didn't realize that the cameras were still on him. He was there pretending to be like mournful. And as soon as he thought the camera was off, my man started to chat, but the camera off yet. That's what she's like. Pretend to be so hurt. And look at the picture,
Well,
I almost didn't recognize the woman in the picture.
I'll
Because
tell you this,
Caswell, what you're saying is what is I'm sure Minister Paul remembers in sociology, front stage and backstage behavior. That is a performance for the public, for the cameras. That's the pretending part of it. Turn off the
yeah,
camera, step out, and a different person. But that is to give you an impression that they are who they suppose say they are. But then you admit, and inadvertently you're just pretending to like people,
pretending to, I
to
must tell
care
you,
about people.
every time I hear that word now, it has a new meaning.
A
But
Freudian a Freudian slip, if ever
I
there
made
was.
I made a note here, Glenn, and it says there. I said here. So the request for prayer is pure photo optics.
Of course.
That's the note I made. It's pure photo optics. If you
You're
understand what
pretending
I'm
to care
saying.
about God.
Yeah.
True, true,
But
true.
listen, gentlemen, I thought I saw Maxine in the waiting room. I just wait for her to come back into the waiting room because I want to keep the show moving. A lot of stuff today, Paul, seemed to have happened in the Senate. There seemed to have been a major activity within the context of the Senate, and Maxine contacted me today, and I thought I like to strike where the iron is hot, and not let things, because what I've found is that this show seems to address matters, and then we hear the government coming after. Still getting a little echo, Glenn. Just check your end again and see,
I,
make sure your thing is in.
all right, yeah.
It
I,
maybe your mic may be picking up your earpiece.
oh, okay.
It may
Um,
be. I'm not the
but
technical
Yeah,
expert.
I hope to have this solved. I've just got back my computer with the battery went astray by about 3 months. It had to be imported. So I'm hoping that by next week I'll be doing what you fellas do. You won't have to put up with these nuisance incidents.
Well, you see these old-fashioned things I got on my
Oh
head.
yeah, I got some too.
Well,
The-
listen, gentlemen,
yeah.
I'm going to welcome Ms. Maxine McLean into our grouping this morning. A rose between all these thorns that we. Oh, dear God, be careful saying thorns. Oh, Lord, have mercy. I
they're gonna be
Showing
politically
gotta be,
bias.
correct.
You're showing bias.
yeah, I show some kind of bias here. No, Lord, have mercy,
If
Maxine.
if you did put on a cute, you'd be thorny.
But Glenn, can you help me find another reference then, apart from
So
the rose? What else can I say? 'Cause
just put on an acute and then
uh-huh.
become thorny.
Honey, okay, all right. Well,
Right.
welcome, Maxine Rose, among the gentlemen Thorny. So good to have you joining us tonight, Maxine. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You're muted. You're muted. You have to take off that mute because we want to hear you laugh. Oh dear, she did more than take off the mute, guys. She took off the entire thing.
She'll come back. She'll
Yeah,
come
she'll
back.
come
But
back in.
she's gonna come in and talk about what happened.
Uh,
Yeah.
until she
I
comes,
want. I want. You know, this.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, Paul. Go ahead until she
Officer,
comes in.
I will be remiss if I did not say this, because we spend time praying for government, praying for the prime minister specifically, and
Yes.
when you pray, God talks back to you. Now, I am not verse to say that we are not fighting a physical problem only. These are not just silly little boys running around killing people, but we have to understand that there's a spiritual component to this.
Yes.
You don't murder, to use the words of the prime minister in her last address, as long as greed and avarice and these kinds of values pertain, you are going to see this. She says there's a tendency to violence, greed, and gangs for dominance. Those are spiritual struggles. And we are seeing in this country an influx of spiritual warfare that we are not accustomed to, spirits that we are not accustomed to. This is a spiritual battle as well. And every Christian is charged to prayer. If we don't pray, and I don't mean prayer because it's formally called, prayer because it's nationally announced, prayer in an ecumenical setting in temples and all this. I'm talking about serious intercession. We are going to see this spirit of murder happening in our country, just as God upbraided Cain and said, "Why are you angry? You can't do what is wrong and be compensated for it. Do what is right, and you'll be just as blessed. You'll even rule over your brother." But we want to prescribe to God what we want to give him, and we don't want to do what is required. And as long as you have leaders who want to do with God, to God, about God, what they prefer and not what God requires, you are going to have this kind of thing. I'll close with this. The same way government touted introduction of marijuana as a medical procedure they're going to have, and we heard all of this uh, foray about medical marijuana. The moment that was introduced, and the moment we tend to go soft on marijuana, there is no place you can't go without you see people smoking marijuana publicly. They're on the buses, they are driving vehicles, they are driving public service vehicles, people on the job, and they are smoking marijuana like they are it's a cigarette. And neither are good for me, in my opinion. But there is a proliferation of it now. It's almost that this is passe, and because it came from the head, and because the head gave the green light to it, it now became possible in the populace. Just like when you abdicate God and you remove yourself and embrace other gods, it is going to filter down, and you're going to see these kinds of ungodly behaviors, and it's not going to stop until those gods are dethroned.
Well, thank you so very much, Rev. I appreciate you coming in and sharing these thoughts with us. Very practical, in terms of the relationship between the spiritual, or what we would tend to refer to as the spiritual and the secular. And I just want to say that when I read the book, I don't see him making a division between the two at the beginning. Both were integrated together. Adam was placed in the garden to work, not to sit back and lounge and relax.
Mhm.
So there was a synergy between the spiritual and the secular, in terms of what was the original intent. So we
Uh,
appreciate you so much. Bringing these aspects uh, to our attention. And I want to say, look, guys, in your comments, we are very accommodating here on this show, but I am not Marcia Weeks. And when I see comments that are derogatory, I will remove them, and I will remove the persons. And I want to caution all of you. I do not make sport on this matter. We express our differences of opinion, and we do so respectfully. But when I see derogatory comments being made, I can assure you I will engage, exchange with the appropriate individuals, and I will have them removed. So please keep our comments respectful, and keep our comments clean and tidy, please. All right,
I'm
because we want to maintain a standard here that, if anything, the Prime Minister would have to follow. All right, thank you
Freddie,
so
before
much.
we move
Yes.
on to Maxine, because we were talking about customs just now. I got a WhatsApp message from a senior customs officer. Since we were talking, and they said 80% of the goods go unchecked. This must be said. It was so since 2019. So 80% of the goods coming to the Bridgetown customs officers don't get a hands on them. 80%.
But
Wow.
And this
how
is the
is that
same.
possible? How is that possible?
That's
Anyhow,
government
Maxine will
policy.
probably tell us. She
That's
was a
government
minister.
policy. No, Maxine wouldn't know. It isn't 20. Maxine wasn't there 2019.
I know how it got there now, though. And this no, actually, Caswell, I made a note here. Funny enough, as I listened to y'all, I wrote down these. I wrote down climate. I'm going to talk about it created by the political leadership. I had customs, Asakuda, I had cash, and then Pastor Paul said cannabis. I wrote down that. And I wrote C for chambers, which would be the Senate chambers, which I'll speak about in a little bit. But I'm glad you raised that, because as I listened to you, I took time to research it, because in the context of guns, and what they were saying is that you have a situation where, and if you go back to a debate, you will hear the minister in the Ministry of Finance, Minister Strong, talking about this new Asakuda system and a green line. Now they have a system which identifies 80%, and Caswell spoke about trusted customer, what it was?
Trusted trader.
Trusted
Trusted
trailer.
trader.
Trusted trader. And but they're trusted on trustworthy trailer too. But the thing is that they generate this list, however they do it, either electronically, and these 80% of these containers are removed and they're not examined. And as Caswell correctly described, they're unlocked and you go away. Now, the question I asked, in the context of all that we are seeing, is there not scope? And I knew the answer before when I asked the question. I was always told you should know the answers to questions you ask. Can there not be random checks made on these containers? And the answer is yes. The question I will put to the Minister of Finance, who spoke about this executive system, the Minister of Finance in and the Minister of, which is the Prime Minister of and Strawn in, is there a practice, has there been a policy decision taken to institute on a regular basis random checks of these containers? Because imagine 80% of containers coming in here, and all I can do as a customs officer is to go and cut
Seal.
a seal on a container and walk away. The other point that was made, and people talk about scanners. First of all, I listened to a minister tell lies the other day saying there were no scanners for a long time. I can tell you that scanners were bought and were in place when this administration came into office. But again, in talking to people who know, I was reminded that a scanner is a tool. The person doing the scanning is the one who will determine what happens to what he or she sees, or whether you are alert enough. I'm not talking now about corruption necessarily. That is an issue too. But there's a process. I'm not going to provide too much information because that's also something that people should not know. But when you scan, you're using a tool, and it is for you to use what's in here to determine how to respond to what you are seeing showing up through that scanning process. As far as I'm concerned now, having listened to that, yes, our borders are, we're an island and we're porous, but I would say to the authorities, go and check those containers, contents. Secondly, who are the people bringing in goods that never did before? Because as Caswell said, trusted trader. But if I have never been importing things before or whatever, so it is important to go in there. I think that's part of the problem, and I would hazard a guess that is probably a very big part of the problem. And there are all kinds of procedures that can be followed even before those things come here if we really want to know what is it, what is in a container, or what are in the containers that are coming that should not be in there. So I hear all of this. So that's my response, Caswell. But sorry, you can go ahead because you were saying, but that is
But
part of the thing.
but before Casper goes on, Maxine, don't they also do a scan? And I stand to be corrected. I'm going by just things I've seen. I'm not the expert in it. But don't they also do a scan sometimes of these containers before they leave the port of origin?
That's why I said that things can be done before they get here. So in essence, from the little that I understand, and I can tell you if I look at it differently and use myself as a traveler, very many times I come home from travel because my work took me to Latin America, South and Central America, quite a lot over the period of time. And the way I pack my clothes to make sure they don't get wet and so on, these things are usually wrapped in plastic and whatever. And almost invariably, when I came out of Latin America and I opened my bags, I would see a slip from the TSA, I think it is,
Yes,
indicating
yes,
that my bag was searched.
correct,
In
correct.
the same way that that is done there, these things can be done because the corresponding officials in another jurisdiction can tell you sometimes they have suspicions about whatever and they check, and the option is to take it out, and the rules should allow, and I would have to look to see what's the most up-to-date rule, but the rules should allow or could allow the prosecution of a person who's, if when that happened. So in other words, if illegal substances, drugs, or weapons were found, we have agreements with various countries as part of the OAS, as part of the United Nations. We have bilateral relations with other countries. So the truth is, it isn't a case where we don't know where they're coming from. I can't imagine everything is checked. That's not the case. And I don't think, and so at the end of the day, there are clear loopholes that can be addressed. I remember I go to the beach. I'm getting an echo. I don't know. I go to the beach by Brandon's, and I remember one morning clearly. At that time, I would go between about 6:30 in the morning, and the Coast Guard warned the swimmers not to go too far out. They obviously were looking for something, and that possible something might have been cargo, illicit cargo being dumped, out of something overnight or whatever, and they might have picked up signals or whatever. So things can be checked, and a lot more can be found. I have some concerns about that 80%, this 80 green containers as they call them, you know. And I would want to hear some more about that from the officials, how the system works, what are the measures put in place to minimize the concerns that we are expressing, the possibility of drugs being found or weapons, because we're talking of both of them, because the two things come together pretty much, you know. In fact, I'll tell you this. I haven't heard anybody mention it, but somebody said, oh, I think it was a story. I think somebody got charged. No, it was a case. I think somebody was charged with having possession of a hand grenade. This was a news item.
Oh,
I think.
yeah, over the last couple of days, yeah.
Yes, a hand grenade. No, no. Imagine when people start to bring those things. I mean, because that I'm sure that was
That's a
not the only
serious.
one.
That's a
That is
serious matter.
extremely
That's an
serious.
extremely serious matter.
You
Well,
know,
I was also going to mention the question of the courier services.
right?
The courier services apparently are used quite avidly by persons to do things in a very sophisticated way, break down guns that can send parts by themselves. And that is an area where it's all also serious examination. But then I mentioned earlier about organized business, the international crime, international business. These things are allowed to happen or may happen because of the international connection. People are bought and sold, etc., for these things to happen. Sometimes you mentioned sometimes it's detected in a person's luggage. Sometimes that is allowed to go on to lead to a bigger fish, but alert the people at the island. So there are all kinds of scenarios that I played with this situation. But I would like to know, do you have any idea? We talk about 80% of the green containers in Barbados. Do you have any idea what the percentage is like in the Caribbean or internationally?
I off the top, you mean in terms of the
Gr-
ratios
uh,
of,
of green ones that are allowed to go on ship?
I would have to research it, but I can bet you Barbados is probably in because the argument is that we want to facilitate trade, but that I would have to see where the others are. That's something I would have to look into,
All right, thank you.
but it is problematic.
My
It is.
mother
Well,
got a question here.
It is idiotic. Idiotic.
yeah,
Pure
go
and
ahead. Go
simple
ahead, Paul.
idiocy.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul. You were going to ask a question?
Yes, I am not sure, but I was told that video evidence is not permitted in court proceedings. I
that
don't.
that has that has changed as far as I know. Legislation was passed. We passed legislation to change that. I would have to look and see whether it has been put in place, but I know that was supposed to be introduced because that's critical.
Because we have a regional security system
Hmm.
that surveys the seas, the territories, and they can see the number for every swift boat that comes off of the South American coast. They can see the exchanges between boats in the Caribbean. Every fishing vessel has numbers on its top. Why are we not able then to interdict those vessels that are coming into the porous port? It is
Well,
strongly believed that sometimes they are escorted in and not interdicted.
well, I let me speak about the region, and I hesitate. I hesitate as I think about what I say. Having, and I guess I can say it now, having served on the Security Council of this country for the duration of time I was a minister, I recognize the challenge you have in speaking to certain things. But you've raised an important point. The point you have made is that information is available. Let me speak in general terms. Is available to governments, and I mentioned earlier that we are members of regional and international bodies, OAS, CARICOM, United Nations. We have bilateral arrangements with Canada, the USA, countries
Interpol.
across, all of these countries, etc. I can tell you that on multiple occasions, and these are not things that you would hear in the news, permission would have been sought by other jurisdictions to undertake certain kinds of activities consistent with what you're describing, Father. I almost call you Father Paul. That sounds like Reverend, Pastor Paul. That which
All is fine.
um, and and so these things can happen, do happen, but at the same time, I will also say this to you, and I think Caswell mentioned. I've heard the word like detector tests mentioned. I can also tell you countries in the Caribbean, and I would say including Barbados at some point in time, there's an annual event called the Trade Winds exercise.
Yes,
Now
we
that
just had it. Yeah.
exercise deals with all of these kinds of security matters and all kinds of things. And there were times when countries were excluded from the exercise because there were concerns about the exposure of the strategies, the tactics, the training to individuals who might very well put it to bad use. And so the question is, how do you reduce the possibility of such things happening? Use like detector tests. People talk about cameras. I remember when the cameras were to be used in certain places, people got upset and whatever. And so at the end of the day, I believe that the matter of weapons, drugs, can be addressed, not eliminated, but I would say better addressed by recognizing the connection between trade policies, as we were describing just now, in terms of trying to expedite the process. But I heard somebody make the point. He wasn't correct in the reason. He was talking about have a 24-hour port or whatever the case may be, and scanning every container. No, I wouldn't try to repeat, because the logic wasn't quite thing. But the point I'm making is that there are ways in which you can effect greater operations. But when you have a system where more than three quarters, almost all, because 80% is almost all of your cargo, your containers come in and are not subject to the kind of scrutiny that people believe that they're subject to, then that opens up a Pandora's box for all
Absolutely.
kinds of wrongdoings.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it would be interesting to see, but we have those are issues that we have to deal with.
Well, before you roll into your what you want to share with us quickly,
Mhm.
Maxine, I want to welcome Kimar to the platform. Good evening, Kimar. It's so nice. I have everybody in at the moment because uh, there are a couple who haven't been in for a while, and you are one that we haven't seen for a while. I wanted to keep Caswell in there, of course, Glenn and Paul, Maxine. We have healthy interaction, but we want to welcome you, Kimar, to the show tonight. Really, really good to have you joining us tonight. And, we're looking forward to the next couple of shows that I'm hosting because Marcia is off. I think Dave might have the flyer that he can put up just so we can catch a quick look at what she's off doing while Maxine is sharing. But welcome, Kimar. Great to have you with us tonight. Good evening. Good evening to you.
And good evening to Kimar. And what I wanted to share, because as I listened, as I said, I was writing down a number of things, and for me, there are connections between a lot of what we do and the climate in which we function as a country, and certainly that the government functions in, is one that either facilitates or demonstrates the principles that it says it espouses. And this afternoon, morning, because the session began at just after 11, um, as I was listening to the Senate, I realized that the first thing that struck me, and I'm a note taker, and I wrote down, they were debating a bill relating to notaries public, and it was very short. And I listened to Senator um, what's her name, Lisa Cummins, and she did a very short take on it. And I said, but if I don't read this, I would not have been able to draw a lot from her. But what was interesting is that when the opposition senator, leader of the opposition in the Senate, Senator Watson, got up, she made a point that I heard Caswell, as a senator, as a then senator, speak to, and that was the what she called for the lack of it was the lateness of notice. In this case, it was not late notice, because this was a bill, or the failure to respond to a request for what they were proposing. Because if you have an order paper of several things, she said that if you look at the order paper, there were about legislation which total about 1,200 pages, because I wrote it down. And she was saying that she had requested information on what was to be debated. Because yes, you can try to prepare all of that, and Caswell will know that as an opposition senator, it is not a full time job. And so her request was made over and over, and she decided, and she spelled out the reasons why. She said that the concern about asking what you were talking about was that there was not a lot of information that is often shared. You get a piece of legislation, there were no explanatory notes about the legislation. Um, in other words, that you have people present, drafters, I suppose, legal employees from the AG's chambers and so on, but there's no background information. And so at the end of the day, she decided that her way of responding to that matter, having made a case that the legislation should be, they should be extended the courtesy about what was going to be debated. And her argument was, and I buy this, and I would speak to this as the person who she would have been addressing if I were in my seat as leader of government business, and she was sitting where she is as opposition. And she made the point, look, it is about being able to do the business of the people. And she's saying legislators, that is the senators and the people in the House, are passing laws. And from all that she is concerned about, that there seems to be not enough seriousness given to the debate. And I understand that. I respect that position, because, as I said, when I sat where Lisa Cummins was today, when I was approached, because I can tell you that after she spoke and left the chamber, because she and Senator Walters left, she said she was not going to support the bill, and she was not prepared to sit through, and these are my words, the rest of the day's debate. And I think Senator Thompson used the opportunity to get into a long discussion about the DLP, which I will not speak to on this show, because that is not the purpose. I'm talking about the business of the Senate. All I would say is that I thought that the president gave her a lot of latitude in that respect, but I was not that person. I was not a presiding officer or whatever. But the point I'm making is that when I sat as leader of government business for 10 years, I made it my business that if asked by either an independent senator or the opposition senators what we were discussing, I would tell them. And usually, sometimes even before we left one sitting, I would indicate this is what, because I appreciated that they were not full-time employees of the Senate, that these are citizens who were given of their time. As Caswell will tell you, senators are not paid a salary except you are minister or parliamentary secretary or minister of state. And so I also appreciate that legislation, as she pointed out, some of the legislation is highly technical and you need to give it serious treatment. Now, I will say this, that when I listened, as I said, a lot of attention wasn't paid by the person who led off the debate. And as a person who led off much of the debates in the Senate for several years, the contribution of the leader, the person leading off, sets the tone for the debate. So if you treat things, very swiftly, then you would not find that, unless, well, the opposition or an independent senator may do it, but the other people on the government side take the cue from the leader. That's the point I'm making. And so oftentimes, if the person does not spend a lot of time, nobody else on that side would do that, unless they felt it very important. So I thought today, unlike what was, well, I like to speak positively. I thought that the session today really reinforced for me the need for officials in Parliament, both the elected and appointed officials, to reinforce the need for them to appreciate that what they are doing is very serious business. And I say I speak because I know the effort I put in. I did not use a research assistant or any such thing to do my research. I did it myself because it was important that I did that. Because, as you say, when you pass a piece of legislation, it impacts people's lives. And unfortunately, I think, and this was the point made by Senator Watson, that for the prior to the appointment for under this new the period of this second term, you did not have opposition. You had 30 people in house, and in fact, so the debate I would say you didn't get much of a debate. And so people pass legislation, very few people, and I have mentioned it on this program already, that it is a concerning matter that when you are impacting people's lives, and the way that they get to understand it in part is to hear a debate in Parliament and to be able to query these things, or to see a piece of legislation well in advance and to be able to discuss it, then people understand the implications. This Caswell will tell you his introduction to this program was about a piece of legislation, National Insurance Act, that
Yes.
if we did not intervene, it would have been passed, and people then would have heard of the impact it would have on them. So I just thought that, as I normally would report on the content of bills and so on, I felt that I needed to speak to this because obviously it will take on a life of its own. But I think that it was a stark reminder for me to all the people who sit in that chamber, whether you're sitting as an opposition senator, whether you're sitting as one of the 12 government senators, the 2 opposition senators, or the 7 independents, that you are deliberating on matters that impact on the life of Barbadians, not those now and those in the future. And it is absolutely important that they address these things. So we can discuss that piece of legislation later on at some point. But and I must
You
tell you
see,
this,
it's
I
really
have
the process. It's really the process you're talking about more than the piece of legislation. Would I be correct?
Yes, I'm just saying because
Yeah.
really and truly, I was saying that there will be a story out there that the opposition, leader of the opposition in the Senate walked out, but she spelled out why, and it was in protest of how things are done, and I
Well,
think the case was well made, and where the government is arguing that it is in the business of transparency and good governance. I just came off of a commission looking at parliamentary reform. And one of the things, the terms of reference was, part of the terms of reference was to undertake an exercise that intended to improve government and governance in Barbados. And so when you look at that, I found it particularly interesting because as I sat there and I put myself in the seat across from Senator Watson, I knew what I did when I was asked, and I understood, and I knew how I guided my Senate colleagues, how we did things, you know.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
Friday before Maxine, before you
and,
Well,
move.
and, and I,
before
I'd like to
you
have a word too.
before you come in, let me give Kimar opportunity just to say good night and make any comments because I'm sure he's been listening to the show as well. Kimar, you gotta have to unmute because I tried to unmute you just now, but it says that you have to do that. Um,
Yeah. Good night, Pastor Ferdinand.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. So good to hear your voice. I'm sure the people are happy to hear you.
Yes, good night to you. Good night to Maxine. Good night to Caswell. Good night to Glenn Murray. And good night to the great Pastor Paul Leacock.
Oh my goodness.
Um, it's very good to see him. I always get very happy when I see Reverend Leacock anywhere in person or screen. Even in church. I feel very happy. Um, so good to see you, sir. And most importantly, good night to all of the members of the loyal opposition. I know time is getting away, so I wouldn't, open any conversation. So I just want to say good night, and let persons know here, but we'll pass over to uh, Jazrel or Maxine who was making the comments.
Yes, thanks, Kimar.
Okay, go ahead, Caswell. Thank you, Kimar. Appreciate
Our
that so
parliament
much.
is a parody of what a parliament should be.
You're a little low, Caswell. Your volume has
I can
dropped a
come
bit.
closer to and raise my voice.
Okay, good, good.
Our parliament is a parody of the Westminster system. We do everything wrong. First of all, Senator Cummings gets up and says that a person is misleading the House. For a person to mislead the House, that is a very serious charge. And as a matter of fact, in the House of Commons in England, you can say that person is inadvertently misleading the House. But when you say a person is misleading the House, you are accusing that person of a serious breach of order for which a minister, if a person was a minister, should resign. So she just gets up and talk all over her face, and and bend it. But really, a point of order is when you breach one of the rules. So, what rule was Senator Watson breaching when she was speaking? What they are really getting up on is a point of ill manners. That you want to interrupt the speaker. You don't have a reason for interrupting. Les Thompson is very good at it, bonging up and saying things that and the president She says sit down. That's not a point of order, but that's his party. She can't do it. But they make a mockery out of the thing. I watched the whole thing with Tricia Watson today. From when Lisa's thing, because I zoom past Lisa. I don't really I just fast forward, and then they watch this Senator Watson. Senator Watson breached no rules of the Senate today. But yet still, Lisa Cummings got up on a point of order and said she was misleading the House. Now, if she's misleading the House, there should have been an inquiry, because that is lying to the House, and lying to the House is a serious offense. You cannot accuse a person of misleading the House. The president should have called them to order. Liz Thompson got up and talked about what happened when she was in Parliament and stuff, when she was in the opposition. But that is not what a point of order is. When
But
you
that is
break the standing orders, when you breach one of the rules of the House, that is a point of order. You call it a point of order because you are breaching the orders. That is what it's all about. But they feel that standing to get up and say a point of order is for some person to sit down, because when a person says point of order, the speaker must sit down. So they
yep.
get up and say point of order, and that they give them the right to intervene and interrupt a person from flowing. They did it to me all the time. But anyway, right now where he was. So when they start by talking about they were tricking me. It
Yeah,
is bad
think
manners. It is
I think I
offensive. It is foul behavior. And this is what they are teaching the young people in Barbados to do. They got youth parliament. No, that they want to teach you how to do that. And that is not parliamentary. As I said, you could only say that the person is inadvertently misleading the House, because you're saying that but what you're saying is not necessarily true, because to mislead the House is to lie. And to lie to the House is a serious offense that will cost your job.
I think I hear Kimar trying to make an interjection there, Council. It's you, Kimar, right?
It was me. It was me.
Oh,
Possibly.
Yeah,
oh,
go
Yeah,
ahead, Glenn. Go ahead.
yeah. I just want to say that
Senior Marion.
oh Lord, you causing trouble now. No, I was going to say that I found it very instructive that Senator Thompson got on her so-called high horses and tried to speak from on high, just of the violation of the principles, the practices, all kind of false modesty and righteousness. She of all people, because she accused Senator Watson of a dereliction of duty of responsibility towards the public of Barbados by leaving the chair. And I said, but as I said, why? How can this be? Because did she remember that her party, towards the end of 2017, boycotted the House for weeks because they said that Prime Minister Stewart was taking too long to call election, and they're done with the House. The House is a mockery, and they walked out for weeks. So if what she's trying to accuse Senator Watson, because Senator was standing on a matter of principle and courtesy and good practice, I think it was irresponsible of her. But then don't forget, when Arthur wants describe her as being cantankerous.
Glenn, I must correct you. That was not a high horse. That horse was gray and it had a cross on its back.
Not too sure. Not too sure what that means, but
That's
I
a little
still
deep
want
for
to hear.
me.
I still want to hear a little bit of Kimar's voice. Kimar, we got a few minutes. You got a couple of minutes, and people want to hear a bit of input from you. I know that you probably you got in late. You mentioned to me and kind of. But any comment you want to make quickly? In terms of what you're hearing. I mean, Maxine is addressing the matter to do with the Senate, but there's been a lot of stuff we've addressed over the night. I don't know if you were able to catch any snippets of it, but any comments you want to make before we begin to wrap down?
Well, I don't know why we waste time speaking about Thompson. I've said countless times on the open line that Liz Thompson needs to be in retirement, political retirement permanently. And I don't know, I mean, she's probably had more jobs in Barbados than the average, you know? One minute she's an ambassador, plenipotentiary, then the next minute she's a climate change advocate, then the next minute she's a Sherpa,
Shirker.
shirker, then the next minute she's a reverend, then the next minute so I you know I don't I just don't keep it. So I don't really you know out of respect for self and others, I don't really think. But I just want to congratulate the stance that the opposition senators are taking. They're not being bullied in the Senate, and I think from the days of Caswell Franklin, he was complaining about the respect that the government has for other legislators. This is not only a problem in the Senate; it was a problem in the House when the opposition leader Bishop Ashley had a problem with them sending him bills at 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the morning, or sometimes the same morning, or sometimes the same time he arrives. Right? So that is not healthy for a democracy, and those are the things that need to be worked on. And I believe that there should be some type of enforcement that requires the opposition and independent senators to have these bills within a specific time frame so that they can adequately contribute to the development of the country. And I'm honest, sometimes the things that these government senators get up and say, I'm very sure that they could allocate some of their time to the opposition senators because they just don't talk anything with common sense or logic. It's just a soap opera to say how great art thou to the prime minister, and then some of the truths that I see these people bend. I sometimes say, well, I see who's singing for supper, and then I understand why the country is in the state that is in. So both houses of this country have become a joke in terms of the level of debate that we have not heard any substantial contributions coming up on the government side that will make anybody stand up and say, okay, this is something definitely to think about. It is just a rehash, recitation. At church they will give you the recitation and say, go and everybody will say the same thing in a chorus. All of the government ministers and the government senators sing the same chorus. How great are the prime minister? And they tend to say what the government is doing, but you can really say what the prime minister is doing because you have a set of no work ministers who are not allowed to work, Pastor Ferdinand, and whose job is just to stand up and sing the chorus. How great art thou? And that's the levels we've stopped in Barbados. And I applaud the opposition senator for standing up and trying to bring back some sense of decency and respect to the host of Parliament in Barbados.
Thank you, Kimar. Really appreciate that. And I can't help but endorse it. Well, look, guys, um, Marcia is off in Trinidad, which is why you're seeing my handsome face hosting the show tonight. Of course, I am not going to align myself with Maxine, but I can align myself with Glenn and Caswell and them, and even Paul. So
What's wrong with me? What's wrong
no,
with
no,
me?
no. I can't refer to you as handsome. You
Okay.
see, if I
Okay.
do that, it would be discriminatory, and I would get chastised so bad on this chat. It's funny. So
He
I'm
called
not going to
himself
refer to you
handsome.
as
He's
handsome.
misleading the house.
I said,
I want to
which
before
house? Which
before
house am I misleading?
and before you go, there's
Yeah,
one thing
Maxine.
I
Oh,
wanted to
glory.
share because and I didn't want to go out too long, but I heard Glenn and so on wondering about the Prime Minister's address on Monday night. Um, but I don't know if you guys are aware that on the Sunday night, the leader of the opposition was in New York addressing
Yes,
Barbadians. And I
yes.
and that's why I mentioned the C's because I was actually plagiarizing something from him when I talk about C's because I get the impression, because I know the Prime Minister said she woke up and she had this desire to speak to the nation. But
And she recorded it. She
and oh yeah,
did
that's what
something
she
she doesn't
recorded.
normally do.
But
She wrote down her
I
thoughts.
suspect somebody who was monitoring the event in New York told her she should speak about it, because it's interesting that in the context of what the leader of opposition talked about, he talked about a framework, the whole situation of Barbados within a framework of what he called the four C's: crime, corruption, cultural decay, and cost of living. And it was interesting to see the road the Prime Minister went down. But I don't know if she's going to visit you, Pastor Paul, at your church on Sunday. I can invite her to St. Stephen's, where I normally go, or I can send her to visit with you. Or maybe
She's going to, if she go to Anglican Church, she's going to St. George.
I
I will have you know, I will have you to know, ma'am, that if I am not there and you hear that I'm arrested, it's because the Prime Minister have directed people to give their guns to the pastors if they don't want to turn them
oh,
in. So I get in possession of illegal guns. All of a sudden, pastors collect guns.
so let nobody accuse you of possession, of illegal possession. But Caswell, I go to St. George ever so often. I went to St. George on Sunday morning virtually, because I was down with a bug or something, and I stayed. I didn't go to my church, so I'm gonna invite you there one Sunday. Say no
Well,
more.
I must tell you, Maxine, that I have had thought of offering offering some of my singing ministry to the Anglican churches on a Sunday evening. So if you want to share that with the rector at St. George, you can let him know. I'd be happy to come and do what we would have called the recital. Is that right? It would be called the recital there, or can I think a recital?
A cantata.
No,
Can
cantata
No,
would
it's,
inquire some others, I think.
right.
I'd come and do a recital for him. I'd be very
No
happy to do
problem.
that.
Pastor Ferdinand.
I'm very open actually to doing recitals for any of the churches that
And
wish to have some music.
you should invite those studying theology. I will let Kazo tell you who to invite, who's studying.
Okay, I will
I will
let him
behave.
message me on that. Yeah, Glenn,
Yeah, I just want to. I know the last comments are coming, and before we go, I just want to make a couple of comments on the Prime Minister's latest presentation. And when I thought about it, it was so disappointing. I thought, as a woman who likes to refer to Bajanism, I think she could appreciate one, because I term it a good old Bajan big rock. They did not discover a big rock, that a Bajan big rock. They did not deliver what was supposed to deliver. And I would say, and to reinforce that, I make two quick references to the Bible and one quick Shakespeare. I'll quote James. This will probably shock you. I do have an acquaintance to the Bible. When I was at Carmel,
You do have
I,
a Bible.
of course, at Carmel, I stopped doing music because there was no money. I did religious knowledge to get another O-level certificate. And I was the favorite person to read passages, but I never refer to James. And James said, after listening to the Prime Minister and the call for faith and prayer, etc., silent meditation and quiet contemplation, James 2 says, I quote, faith by itself, right? If it is not accompanied by action, is dead.
Faith without works.
First it's dead, though, is a waste of time, is mere noise. And then there's another one by Shakespeare talks about, will describe as sound and fury signifies nothing. Right. And the last one will be Matthew, who said, this is the public expectation and hope that she would have given them something meaningful to deal with crime and violence. She says, I quote, you parents, if your children ask for a loaf of bread, do you give them a stone instead? Yes, he got a stone, a big rock stone.
My experience with
that's
contemplation, Glenn, was detention.
But that's your listen. That is your as well. That is your closing remark. Okay.
My closing remark would be I invite all of you to join me at the Garfield Sobers Gymnasium on Sunday, the 21st at 10. We had a service planned as the diocesan, the Anglican diocese. We have a service annually, and this one we're celebrating our 200th anniversary, and so that was one of the events. So
Well, tell them to
maybe
tell them to invite me to sing. I'll be happy to come. I'm
uh,
Reverend from St. Joseph. What was his name again?
Father Messiah.
Father Messiah said to me one day, um, Rev, once an Anglican, always an Anglican. So I think I would qualify to perform for the production for the event. So you can
I
let them know I'll
and,
be
and
happy
this
to
this
do
one
so.
is for Father Pastor Leacock. Once a Leacock, always a Leacock. My maternal grandparents were Leacocks. No, my grandmother was her maiden name was Leacock. My great grandfather was, and your brother James looks like one of my uncles, but that's another story for another
Yeah,
time.
you all can connect
You know
and
that.
see what happens on that one, right?
or,
Any
or,
final
or go to the archives.
which
Mr.
archives, the ones
Canberra
that burn? Any closing remarks from you there, Kimar, before we jump off?
Yes. Well, I am streaming tomorrow. Alternate views. Also on the 27th of July, we'll be hosting a fundraising line at George Street Auditorium to assist one of our patron supporters, someone who's always at the marches, someone who's always around. As was spoken on the show, he would have had a bad fall, and he's down, and we um as a would have discussed privately before coming to the public. We're gonna do a fundraiser for him, Mr. Oswald Newton.
Yes.
And since it is crop over time, we're gonna have a sweet crop over lime and fish fry at George Street Auditorium, and we're asking persons to make any donations that they can to help Oswald get back on his feet. You never know when it is your time and you may be in need. So we're asking persons to come out and lime and socialize. It is not a party event, it's a people event. It's for anybody. BLP, DLP, APP, UPP, anybody to be of good, be a brother's keeper, and let's come out with food and drink and music and have a good time in celebration of helping Oswald back on his feet. So I look forward to seeing you there. Here's the poster, Saturday, July the
7th,
27th at
2
2
to 9
o'clock.
p.m.
And yeah, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Kimar.
If you permit me, sir, my closing remarks. I remember in the book of Revelation, the red horse is rush comes out, and it's the horse that the rider turns people to killing each other. I'm hoping that that is not symbolic of what is happening right now. Uh, he has a large sword, and we better be careful of the red horses that we espouse, lest they cause us to turn on each other.
Thank you so much, Paul. We have to be careful indeed. I noticed Oyston's painted red, and I noticed some of the benches out by Sky Mall painted red. So I'm hoping that what you said is not symbolic. I hope not. I hope not. Of course, the Labour Party color is red. Anyhow, I'm just going to leave that. We're just going to leave that there. Uh, Dave, if you could put up that flyer, because some of you may be wondering where Marcia is tonight. She is in Trinidad with the Praise Academy dancers and Praise Academy group. She is there to perform, and also several others are in Trinidad with her. I can't remember his name at the moment, but a young man that came here because they're doing a full production in Trinidad. They're down south, and as a result of that, I have the honor of being your host over the next several shows. And I hope I can get as good a job done as Marcia. She's a hard act to follow in terms of how she does her show. But I certainly will give it a shot and give it a try. So we want to remember her. Those of you who are in the context of your faith and prayer, remember her in prayer. I always, Maxine, take very seriously when you get in an airplane these days to travel. With all that we have heard, I personally do not let anybody I know get on an airplane unless I first pray for them to make sure that they arrive having left the ground and go in when one considers the hearings that we've had in the United States to do with Boeing. I
There's a
take it
note
very
from Marcia
seriously.
in the chat. Pastor
Um,
Ferdinand, there's a note from Marcia in the chat.
Right,
If
I'm
you
going to look at it very quickly here to make sure
excellent.
I get it. She says, thanks, Dr. Ferdinand and team. The electricity went off for several hours today at our accommodation site. It's back on now. We had a great rehearsal and we'll travel to San Fernando tomorrow for more rehearsals and workshops. So we want you to know, Marcy, if you're watching the show, that we've got your back. We certainly going to be praying for you, and I can tell you that the loyal opposition miss you already. And like I said, I'll try to do the best I can, but I know, to walk in her moccasins is a difficult task. So we are really grateful. Thank you so much, Caswell, for being here tonight. I appreciate your presence, General. Kimar, I'm going to try to get you on a little earlier once you can get in and get everything done. Klein, thank you, sir, for
My pleasure.
executing the way that you did tonight, and thank you, Paul, for bringing that spiritual perception. There's some who don't understand the multifaceted component. In psychology, they only look at the dichotomy of man, but in our faith, we look at the trichotomy, and so it's important for us to understand that man is fundamentally a spirit with a soul living in a body. And today, as I was watching the interment of Sam Wilkinson, I saw so many people, looking at his body, and I thought to myself, who he is really not there. That is just the house that carried who Sam was. So we are grateful for your contribution tonight, sir. Thank you so very much for being here. And of course, what can I say, Maxine? You always bring such a flavor to the show, especially when they got all these men, all these men around. But I ain't going to say anything because I'm not a Combamarian. I'm a Harizonian, and I accept all the sympathy from all of
Neither,
you.
neither am I.
But boxing is a common man by association.
If I deny common mayor, I do it at my own peril. I have
Right,
my
Well,
brother
I
sent
can.
his entire 4 daughters to common mayor, and
Well, well,
and the
only one of my children went to Combamere, and only one of my siblings went to Combamere. My other sibling went to Queen's College, and my two of my other children went to Dighton Griffith, and my grandson has just passed what we would have called his screaming test, is what I
agreement
call
is.
it. He's just passed his screaming test for Dighton Griffith. He starts Dighton Griffith next semester.
The 10 of
So
us went all over.
yes,
And
yes. So
Leonard's was in Paris, you name it.
so I am grateful for all the contribution of the Combamarians today
Thank you.
You're most
on
welcome.
this show.
The mafia school.
And
Careful.
Dave,
This,
Dave,
careful,
it will.
Maxine. The associate members can be expelled.
Dave, you know what we're going to be looking for? There are two songs, at least two songs, Dave, that we need to close the show with tonight. I don't know how familiar Paul is with them, but two songs we need to close the show with tonight. You know the two of them. And so I'm going to ask you to just, what is it? What is it that they say now? Hit it.
Dancers, come forward, walk out. This one I got worldwide.
Just days after former government backbencher Ralph Thorne crossed the floor, he's taken the oath of office as leader of the opposition.
Cross the floor, let me do some more like Ralph Thorne. Ralph Thorne. On the other side, cross the floor, let me do some more like
Then oh, and more will be left over. Are these trips so important? Yes, I'm for real, member. I am for real. Don't let me talk out your business. Don't let me talk out your business. All right. There has to be some order here. The Minister of Finance is not party to this present transaction, Your Honor. Ask him to keep quiet, please. And I say to you further, Mr. Speaker, that my conscience, my location here is related to my conscience. I said it last year. It is well with my soul. And I can't decide, so I'm moving with the tide, moving with the tide. Take a wine on the right side, take a wine on the left side. And I can't decide, so I'm moving with the tide. Cause I'm ready to mash up the body. Oh gosh, I can mash up the body. So let me do this now. Cause I'm ready to mash up the body. Oh gosh, I can mash up the body. Yeah, and let me go now. Cross the floor, cross the floor, cross the floor. Let me do it some more like Ralph Torn, Ralph Torn. On the other side, cross the floor, cross the floor, cross the floor. Let me do it some more like Ralph Torn, Ralph Torn.
That is my man, so whether he cross or in cross, he will always be there for us.
I came to a point where I had to take the decision that if my philosophical and political views do not accord with those of government in terms of its legislation, in terms of its policy, the relationship becomes untenable.
Promise us a better tomorrow. Tell me that it's suffering done. Me attack the vote and let me down. Me attack the vote and let me down. She did only want little dealing, big contracts and not corruption. Me attack the vote and let me down. Me attack the vote and let me down. Barbados is too small for me. My pocket full, now you and job they promise me. And a girl like me, want power and more money. You cry transparency, but that's a no for me. Promise us a better tomorrow. Tell me that it's suffering done. Me attack the vote and let me down. Me attack the vote and let me down. She did only want little dealing, big contracts and not corruption. Me attack the vote and let me down. Me attack the vote and let me down.
I'm pretending to be good at maths nor English. I just pretending to care about people. Good at maths nor English. English. Pretending to be good. I pretending to be good. Just pretending to be good. I pretending to be good. I just pretending to care about people. 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 Pretending. And I'm pretending to be good at maths nor English. I just pretending to care about people. And I'm pretending to be good at maths nor English. I just pretending to care about people. I'm pretending to be good. And I'm pretending to be good at maths nor English. I just pretending to care about people. And I'm pretending to be good at maths nor English. I just pretending to care about people.
Lord have mercy.
I tell you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, God bless you. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Loyal Opposition, Coalition of the Righteous. Appreciate all of you that joined us tonight, all of your comments and Caswell, somebody says sympathy, Reverend Ferdinand call me and say, Michael's our kit and kin. You really it's such a joy to have all of you with us, really. And we thank God that even in the seriousness of what we are addressing, that we can laugh a bit. The Bible says that laughter is good medicine, very good medicine. And we are happy that we can laugh. So thank you again, gentlemen,
Yeah,
lady, for being with us tonight. Yes,
before you go,
yes.
right. I just wanted to say that um, there's nothing without help from God, and that is the slogan of the St. Michael School. So just wanted to leave that with you before we end tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'll try to get my slogan at Harrison College for next time. Well, folk, God bless. It's been a pleasure having you tonight.
Thank
Look
you.
after yourselves. Thank you so very much for all that you've contributed. And those of you in the loyal opposition, thank you so much for being here and your comments. God bless you. Good night and have a great, great rest for the night.
Amen.
Bye bye.
Good night.